Nearly 2 years after Ralph Yarl nearly lost his life, the man who shot him, Andrew Lester, is changing what we all thought was going to be a trial that was set to begin in the next couple of weeks. Instead, Andrew Lester is changing his plea in the Ralph Yarl shooting. This came down yesterday. Fox 4, to its credit, had it first, and we're glad you're here on a Friday morning on KCMO. Now, it is always going to be gross to me that people will want to assume this was always driven by race, and they are so dug in on the racial narrative of this story from 2 Aprils ago. And you might be new to Kansas City. You may not remember this story. It did get national and international attention when a teenage boy named Ralph Yarl went to go pick up his brother from a friend's home in April of 2023. And he showed up at the wrong house. He went to 115th Street in the Northland instead of going to 115th Terrace. And he went to Andrew Lester's home. He was a man in his 80s, and he starts banging on the door and looking for his brother. Turns out he's at the wrong house. Andrew Lester, once again, living by himself in his 80s, gets startled, brings a gun to the front door, and shoots Ralph Yarl and nearly kills him. Now, Ralph Yarl, thank goodness, is alive and able to tell his story. But the immediate reaction was old white man shoots young black boy, and that's what made this an international story. Let's just be honest about it. If it's white guy, no news. If it's black guy, no news. But it's old white man, young black boy, people allege racism, and that makes it a national story. So this has been kind of on and off percolating for the last, 18 months to 2 years at this point. And it was expected that Andrew Lester was going to take this to trial. Well, something changed here in the last couple of days. And Fox 4 had the report first that it's something nobody saw coming until just a few days ago. There was every indication that Andrew Lester was going to fight the charges against him for assault and armed criminal action. His attorney even said at one point that from his view, the state getting a conviction was going to be very hard against 86-year-old Andrew Lester. But now he's changing his plea. I can't sit here and say that's the wrong decision. The man's 86 years old. Does he not want to go through with the trial? I don't know. Is it too much stress on him? Possibly. I have no idea why he would change it at this point in time. But the larger story is this. The way the media framed this in Kansas City and around the world is something that, frankly, has always been disturbing to me. Not because Andrew Lester isn't a racist. I don't know if he is or not. You don't know if he is or not. I don't know the man. But the assumption that if a white guy ends up shooting somebody on his own property who's at his door that he doesn't know, and that individual happens to be black, the assumption that that automatically is a racially motivated action is the conclusion that everybody jumped to almost 2 years ago. And we just don't have the evidence of that. And frankly, it was even something that was alluded to on the Fox 4 news piece last night.
The story garnering national and international attention as the question was raised, did race play a role in this case? Something the family believes, but neither the state or defense introduced in this process that now finds itself heading for a resolution before a jury could weigh in.
My emotion is mixed. It's anger, and then thank God it's going to be over.
Yes, and thank God for everybody, it is going to be over. I will say that much as well. It is going to come to an end. But the fact that you had somebody, once again, just willy-nilly called a racist just because he's white and the person he shot happens to be black is a world that we have to get out of in this country. Now, maybe Andrew Lester is a racist. I don't know. But I'll sit here right now and tell you that the fact that people are just assuming that because of the racial makeup of each individual in this case, that has always been disturbing to me. And it's very much anti-American is what it is at its very core. Now, we also had some other big news yesterday here in Kansas City, and that was the news that a federal district court issued a preliminary injunction suspending the city of Kansas City, Missouri's ban on what they call landlord discrimination of renters using vouchers to help pay their rent, specifically ones that are part of the Section 8 program. So this is something that Mayor Lucas was very hot on when they rolled this out. Gosh, year and a half, 2 years ago at this point. It's been a while. But he ended up trying to make it so that basically landlords would have to take Section 8. Well, yesterday, federal district court said, nope, not for now. They are putting a suspension on that requirement from the city of Kansas City, Missouri. And there are landlords all over Kansas City that rightfully so are celebrating this. Requiring a landlord to take Section 8 no matter where they are in town is completely unfair. It's not an anti-poor person thing. It's not an anti-Section 8 thing. That's not how this should be framed. That's not how it should be looked at. It's simply saying, does somebody who owns a piece of property have the opportunity to pick and choose who they want to stay in that property? And I'm not talking about all right, don't jump to the race thing. We just talked about the race deal with Ralph Yarl. Not about race, not about discrimination based on that, right? Discrimination based on whether or not you're actually paying your own way when it comes to your rent. That is not a racial discrimination thing. That's not about sexual orientation. That's not about any of those things that are protected under law. This is completely different from that. It's saying who's really paying your way, who's actually paying your rent. And this is something that had landlords in Kansas City up in arms when it was announced by the city. And like everything in the legal process taking forever, I feel like we haven't talked about this in a year and a half, but it just came down yesterday. And the city put out a statement saying the actions taken by landlords to challenge the program in courts and in Jefferson City jeopardizes housing access for over 17,000 Kansas Cityans waiting for housing vouchers, which leaves over 17,000 Kansas Cityans still looking for a stable place to live in our city. Having experienced homelessness in my own life, says Mayor Lucas, I can only hope that landlords spend time this winter working with the city, housing advocates in our community, and their renters to help people get and stay off the streets here in Kansas City, rather than looking to close the door to housing access through high-priced lobbyists and lawyers at our legislatures and in our courts. That's the official statement from Mayor Lucas yesterday. Well, first off, there are high-priced lobbyists across the board. Can we drop that notion that just helping the little guy on Section 8? I mean, please. There are high-priced lobbyists and high-priced attorneys across the board here. Spare me that false narrative, because that's exactly what it is. And I want 17,000 Kansas Cityans who are waiting on housing vouchers to, if they qualify, get them and be able to live somewhere. And there are plenty of places that will absolutely take those vouchers. There are. But requiring somebody to take them is something that a lot of people have been bothered by since the city tried to get that passed. And now the courts have put a hold on it. 913-408-7957. We will hear from landlords and housing advocates throughout the morning here on KCMO Talk Radio. Bill O'Reilly is going to be on the show at 8:35 today. So a couple hours away, but make sure that you are back locked in if you got to take some time off this morning for 8:30 when Bill O'Reilly joins us on KCMO Talk Radio. So I heard something yesterday for the first time that made me think we might be closer to an answer from none other than Travis Kelce. What is it? I've got the audio next on KCMO.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
I think he's done, man. I think Travis Kelce's done. 6:20, good morning. Happy Friday. Maybe he's having a big Valentine's Day with his love, Taylor Swift. But Travis Kelce, of course, had himself a bad Super Bowl. We all know that by now. Not trying to relive it, but we know he had it. And you guys know how NFL Films always has like cameras and they've got microphones and everybody during these Super Bowls.
Yeah.
So this I saw last night. I don't know if either of you guys saw this, but it's a moment towards the end of the Super Bowl between Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. And, well, I'll just play the 7-second clip and you can hear it for yourself.
Love you, brother.
Travis, you know that. I owe you a lot for this.
Kelce's voice is a little muffled there, but he says, "Love you, dog." And then he says, "I owe you a lot for what you've done." And they're embracing and they're hugging like two guys who may not be on the field together ever again. I don't know if you're thinking I'm reading too much into it there, Mark, but have you changed your mind at all, or do you still think he's coming back next year?
I'm still 50-50.
You're 50-50?
Yeah.
Are you 50-50 back there, John, or are you leaning my way?
I got him coming back after all is said and done.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so
He
I'm
might
the only
be
guy.
50-50 in his own mind right now.
Okay. Wow. So I'm the only guy, the three of us, who thinks that he's not coming back at this point.
Now, I'm not going to be shocked, but I think he's got one more year, and they got the deal, and I don't know that he wants to go out necessarily that way, but I know he's right now going, I don't want to work. I don't want to do all that crap again.
I think that's a reasonable conclusion
It's
to
a
come
highly
to.
motivating factor.
Yeah. Your body just got beat up for the last 8 months. It's like, oh, man, at 35, 36, do I want to keep doing that? Now, this is always weird to me because I'm like a year older than Travis. And to think about your career in the standpoint of I'm too old for this is just bizarre to me. Like, don't get me wrong. It is getting harder for me to, like, get up off the floor when I'm playing with my kids. I admit that. Than it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. All of a sudden, I'm like, man, my knees are killing me here. Oh, gosh.
Now, when you get old enough, you start saying, is there anything else I can do while I'm down here?
Yeah. Yesterday, I felt like an old man. I was getting up off the floor, and I'm like, woo, man, geez, these knees are killing me here. What's going on? But I'll worry about that as I get older. But I hear
Not
Travis.
kipping out of it, just propping up on the couch now to pull up. Right?
Oh, man. But, you know, when you think about these guys, I mean, Travis is an old man in the sport. He is. And it was on display on Sunday. So I saw that embrace, and, you know, it just, for me, furthers the narrative that I hear a guy who sounds like he's done. Now, can he change course? Absolutely. But he sounds to me like he's done. In the meantime, back here in Kansas City, do we think any of the guys are still around, or are they all off to the islands or off to warmer weather or their official homes? What are we thinking?
I'd say they're probably gone.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially when they saw the weather forecast. I'm out of here. Jeez. It's 18 degrees right now. It's the warmest morning we've had all week, I think, in this town. And do not look ahead to next week when Tuesday's going to be 0 degrees and Wednesday's going to be -6. Thursday will be -9 degrees.
Chiefs had a great tackle, John Allen. I think he was from Iowa, but he liked to ice fish. He wouldn't have had to go very far this weekend.
Not these days. He would have been hanging around for a few weeks. Oh, this is great. But I don't blame them if they're getting out of here. I mean, my goodness, body's getting beat up for months. Go get some warm weather, fellas. It's good with us. But you've got problems now because, at least in certain school districts, they're already running out of snow days. In Olathe, they're saying right now they're going to be okay, but there was a big story on Woke 41 Action News last night talking about how each school district in Kansas must choose a 186-day schedule or 1,116-hour school year. So right now, if they were to go over the allotted days, they would need to either add more days to the end of the school year or add 5 to 10 minutes to each school day. For example, Olathe School District has 4 snow days with 3 of them already used. Wednesday, yesterday, or 2 days ago, was supposed to be a half day, but that was canceled because of the snow. So right now, Olathe is saying that They were already scheduled off yesterday and today, so they're not discussing adding more time to the school year. They've got one snow day left, just to use Olathe as the example. Here's the problem. You know and I know, if it's -9 at the bus stop next Thursday, they ain't going. Or at least they're not going on time. They'll do one of those 2-hour delays that they've done.
Any indication how virtual learning days factor into snow days? They don't count those, do they? Because if I were a kid going, hey, I'm not going to let, if it's not a snow day or if virtual learning is not, should be a regular day of school, I guess is what I'm trying to imply.
I just don't think that certain districts do virtual learning. I mean,
Maybe
Mark,
not, right.
Do your girls, have they ever had virtual learning? I know, I think Lee Summit does it, but I've never heard of Olathe doing it.
No, yeah, they haven't done it since 2020.
Oh, thank goodness. And frankly, I think that's a total cop-out. All right? Get the kids in the freaking classroom. I don't want to hear about virtual learning to make up for a real day of school. I just think that is ridiculous, and we've learned what a failure it is. It just seems like an opportunity for districts to say, well, we had a school day today.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Come on. Stop that.
Pretty high absenteeism, I would imagine.
I would imagine as well.
I think high schoolers could do that better, but they don't want to split up the snow days between elementary, middle school, and high school in the same district.
Keep it district-wide.
That's a good point. And I don't blame them for doing that either. Either we're all having school or we're not. I mean, it's really, let's not overcomplicate this, guys. And no one is learning a damn thing sitting on a laptop in the house, okay? We learned that the hard way for a full year back in 2020. Don't try to pull that nonsense again on us. Don't do it. And speaking of working from home or, doing school from home, do you hear this all-time rant from JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon? Oh, this was incredible. It's a leaked audio clip of Jamie Dimon, who runs JP Morgan, and he just went off on the work from home thing that we all know is just absurd at this point. It doesn't make your business as efficient. It's not something that works if you want to have a well-run operation, and he just trashed the entire work from home model. He's cursing left and right. Mark had to put 10 bleeps in this thing, and I'll play it for you right after the news on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
On Friday's Guy Benson Show, Shannon Bream, host of Fox News Sunday, will be here, as will Trey Gowdy, our colleague, talking politics and the news of the day. Coming up at 2 o'clock on KCMO.
How do you not love this from JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon? This call was leaked in the last 12 hours or so, and it's gone viral since then. Jamie Dimon is the chief executive of JP Morgan Chase. He met with employees in Columbus, Ohio this week, and he celebrated a newly opened bank branch there. He then held an internal town hall meeting where employees asked him about workplace issues. And his rant on remote work/work from home was a thing of beauty. Now, before you freak out and say, well, I work from home, there are industries who are working from home before COVID. There are large corporations around the country that have had work from home in place for many years. There are guys I'm friends with in the neighborhood who have worked from home for 15 years. I mean, it's not new for them or their industry. But obviously, for many, it became this thing during COVID, and now it's back to the forefront of the conversation, in part because of what's happening with the federal government, where Trump said, hey, get your butt back into the office, and if not, you're fired. And there was this outrage like, oh, my goodness, so
how dare you?
You can't possibly have us come back to the office. Yes, we can. And yeah, you should. Businesses run more efficiently. There is far more creativity when you're sitting in a room with a group of people, right? Putting together plans for the business, plans for the industry, whatever it might be. It's just a better work environment. In most cases, not every case. If you're running your own small business, totally different story, right? But Jamie Dimon, he's had enough of this work from home nonsense, and he made it very clear in this leaked audio.
A lot of you were on the Zoom, and you were doing the following, okay? Looking at your mail, sending texts to each other about what an asshole the other person is. Okay, not paying attention, not reading your stuff, and if you don't think that slows down efficiency, creativity, creates rudeness and stuff, it does, okay? And when I found out that people are doing that, you don't do that in my meetings. You go to meeting with me, you got my attention, you got my focus, I don't bring my phone, I'm not sending texts to people, okay? It simply doesn't work, and it doesn't work for creativity, it slows down decision-making, and don't give me this work from home Friday works. I call a lot of people on Friday. They're not a person to get a hold of. But here are the problems, okay? And they are substantial, okay? Which is the young generation is being damaged by this. They may or may not be on your particular staff, but they are being left behind. They're being left behind socially, ideas, meeting people.
That's what I'm talking about, Jamie Dimon. That's right, my man. That's outstanding. He's spot on with everything he just said there. Some of you might be offended by it. I don't care. That's what needs to be said. There are people who want to turn us into Europe. That's what they want to do. We're going to take some siestas in the mid-afternoon. We're going to work 4 days a week. We're going to work 32-hour work weeks, but still get paid for 40 hours. Just ask Bernie Sanders. I mean, that's how the world works, right? That's what Bernie Sanders would tell you, live from his commune this morning. Or, no, sorry, now he has 3 homes because he's been on the government dole for 5 decades. But America became great because, obviously, we had the best government set up in the entire world, and we busted our tails in a way that no other country did. We cared about family and faith and working hard, and that is what brought us together as a nation to create the greatest experiment in the history of mankind. And there are some people who want to throw it away. And I love this line there. Don't tell me work from home on Friday works. He's like, I call people on Friday and no one's around. Yeah, because they're playing golf or they're playing tennis. I mean, not in Kansas City in February, but you get the point.
So, it's not casual Friday?
I mean, I'm fine with going back to the days of casual Friday. At least people are in the office.
Right.
Not sitting on a Zoom call in their underwear, pulling a Jeffrey Toobin or something like that, And then you got Dimon continued this leaked audio rant. Here he is continuing, JP Morgan CEO.
Now, you have a choice. You don't have to work at JP Morgan. So the people of you who don't want to work at the company, that's fine with me. I'm not mad at you. Don't be mad at me. It's a free country. You can walk with your feet, but this company is going to set our own standards and do it our own way. And I've had it with this kind of stuff. And, I come in, I've been working 7 days a week since COVID. And I come in and where's everybody else? They're here and there and the Zooms don't show up. And people say they didn't get stuff. So that's not how you run a great company. We didn't build this great company by doing that, by doing the same semi-disease shit that everybody else does.
I am in love with his enthusiasm on this topic. Jamie Dimon is going to be 69 years old next month. He doesn't need this, man. He doesn't. He's made more money than he could ever make and spend, right? He's clearly got a passion for what he does. That's what's very evident when you hear this guy. And I get it. When you're the CEO of a major company, now you should be working harder than everybody else. But you also want people who are with the company to at least show like they care. And he's like, I show up around here and I'm like, where is everybody? And the point there that also was so key is you don't have to work here. You don't. You can vote with your feet. And as he said, I don't hate you for that, but don't be mad at me, right? I mean, there's no ill will here, but this is how this company is going to run. And it's very similar to something, Trump was talking about the other day. I guess this was probably last week when Trump brought up the fact that, hey, people are working from home, air quotes, but they're not actually working at all. He brought that up and he was spot on to bring that up. Because and I know people who have been working from home and they ain't working a full 8-hour day. All right. They got a million things going on at the house and they just can't possibly be nearly as efficient as they would be if they were in an office somewhere. So this is another thing in the wake of COVID where the pendulum is swinging back to where it needs to be. So many things like policing issues, right? I mean, we focused on that here in Kansas City for quite some time. To masking things, to how we operate our schools, to how our business is run. People are realizing that so much of what we went through was just inefficient and stupid. And now even guys like Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan swinging it back the other way and saying, yeah, those days are over. We're done with this. We're not continuing with this nonsense. No way, no how. We are less than 2 hours away from Bill O'Reilly being on the show. 8:30 this morning, he will be here on KCMO. Do not miss that conversation. And Roger Marshall, Kansas U.S. Senator, he's coming up at 7:05, just over 20 minutes from now, because he had a big day yesterday. He got a shout out from Bobby Kennedy for helping him get across the finish line as Health and Human Services Secretary. So Marshall was a big part of getting Bobby Kennedy across the finish line. And then Marshall also put out a statement yesterday regarding Donald Trump exploring reciprocal tariffs. We know that could have a big impact on Kansas farmers. Here's what Roger Marshall said yesterday in a statement on X. Gone are the days of unfair trade deals that give foreign nations the upper hand. Today, President Trump put the world on notice. America will no longer be taken advantage of. Reciprocal tariffs are strong, strategic negotiating tools that ultimately strike better trade deals, ensure long-term economic growth, and strengthen our national security. With President Trump's leadership, I am confident we will bring more jobs back to our country, prioritize American-made goods, and level the playing field. That was the statement from Roger Marshall. He will expand on that statement when he joins us just after 7 o'clock on KCMO. But coming up, the top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour. The 6 at 6 is next on 95.7 FM KCMO and always streaming on our KCMO Talk Radio app.
It's Mundo in the Morning. Now on FM at 95.7. Set a preset on your radio. KCMO Talk Radio.
6:48 on a Friday. Glad you're here on KCMO. Roger Marshall in 15 minutes. Bill O'Reilly will be here at 8:30. It's that time of the morning.
It's time for the 6 at 6 on 95.7 KCMO Talk Radio.
Let's give you those top 6 stories to keep an eye on in the 6 o'clock hour on KCMO 95.7 FM. Here we go.
Number 1.
All right. A federal judge late last night issued an order compelling the Trump administration to lift its 3-week funding freeze on U.S. foreign aid. This came down while most of us were probably sleeping. Judge Amir Ali issued the order in U.S. District Court in Washington in a lawsuit brought by 2 health organizations that received U.S. funding for programs abroad. In his order, Ali noted that the Trump administration argued it had to shut down funding for thousands of USAID aid programs abroad to conduct a thorough review of each program and whether it should be eliminated. But the judge said that Trump officials failed to explain why a blanket suspension of foreign aid programs was necessary before the programs were more thoroughly reviewed. So now we've got unelected, nameless, faceless judges telling the president of the United States what he can and cannot do. I understand that the system is an important one in America, but it does feel like, and we knew this was going to happen, right? I mean, this is not going to be a surprise to anybody that you find a radical judge to do the bidding of the party out of power. But it is truly amazing when you think about this, that this guy who nobody elected to do anything was just confirmed in the last couple of months to be a judge, is now preventing the duly elected president of the United States from doing things like looking at what is going on within some of our bureaucracies. A judge ruling like a king over a great country. Something tells me this will be stopped as well. Let's move on.
Number 2.
Story number 2 here this morning for the 6 at 6. Back here in Kansas City, a shocking twist in the shooting of Ralph Yarl, the young man who showed up at Andrew Lester's home in April of 2023 at the wrong house, looking to pick up his brother late at night up in the Northland. The story got international attention, and it turns out that Andrew Lester is going to change his not guilty plea in a last-minute hearing coming up later today. The trial for 86-year-old Andrew Lester was set to take place in just a few days, and now it will not be happening. According to Fox 4 sources, no one really saw this coming. There was every indication that Lester was going to fight these charges against him for assault and armed criminal action, but it looks like that's not happening. What changed? I don't know. Who knows if we'll ever know. But this story did get international headlines, largely because it was an old white guy and a young black teenager. That's it. I mean, you know, we sadly see shootings all the time in Kansas City. This one had racial components that made it compelling for media, and that's what made this an international story going on almost 2 years ago now. You may recall this. April of 2023 is when this happened. And after nearly 2 long years, we now know that Andrew Lester is going to change his not guilty plea in a hearing scheduled for today. Elsewhere.
Number 3.
Let's keep it in Kansas City, where a federal court issued a preliminary injunction suspending the city of Kansas City, Missouri's ban on landlord discrimination of renters, this is from Fox 4, using vouchers to help pay their rent, specifically ones that are part of the Section 8 program. The city, under this ordinance, requires every landlord who is given a voucher from a potential tenant to join the program. And now the city will have to stop that, which means that landlords will not be, at least for the time being, required to accept Section 8 housing vouchers. So the mayor has said that they will continue to fight this. He says it's not a political issue. He adds it's fundamentally a human rights one. People need a place to sleep. And he said the reason that we are doing this is to make sure we can create more housing availability for people, adding that this may jeopardize housing access for over 17,000 Kansas Cityans waiting for housing vouchers.
Number 4.
Well, do I give you the funny one now? I'll break it up with the funny one here. Story number 4 this morning for the 6 at 6. Tim Walz is considering a run for U.S. Senate. I'm not kidding. Yes, that's right. Old Timmy Tim. Some called him Tampon Tim back in the day. Could you imagine if this guy was VP right now? Oh, my gosh.
Please.
What a horrible thought that is on a Friday morning.
He would have been doing his crazy wave at the Super Bowl.
Could you imagine? Forget the wave at the Super Bowl. That would be just goofy. He'd be walking off a plane in Europe like J.D. Vance is right now, doing his stupid wave and kicking his legs up like he's a rocket. I mean, that guy was something else. So now Tim Walz, who is currently the Minnesota governor, is considering a run for Senate. According to Politico, came from a person close to the governor who was granted anonymity. He's considering the run after current U.S. Senator Tina Smith announced her retirement from the blue-leaning battleground state yesterday. Now, Walz could also run for re-election as governor in 2026 if he wants to. But yes, Tiananmen Tim Walz is considering a run to be in the United States Senate. I guess he just had so much fun in his run as VP, he wants to maybe get a little more national traction.
He'll get more run in Senate, right? He'd only have one more term of governor.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I mean, he could be a senator till he's 90, like a lot of these people. If you can't get yourself a real job, you just go into government. That's how it works, right? All right, let's move on.
Number 5.
Let's go down to Louisiana, where the investigation continues into the death of former Kansas City sports reporter Adan Manzano, who was there to cover Super Bowl 59 on behalf of Kansas City Telemundo. Well, we now know that the woman who is being looked at has had her bond revoked. 48-year-old Danette Colbert was seen leaving Adan Manzano's hotel room hours before he was found dead inside of that room. Officers arrested Colbert 2 days after the incident, saying that there was evidence that she robbed him, but now they're digging deeper into what exactly she may have been involved with. So she's got a lengthy rap sheet that includes a 2022 arrest in Vegas for administering a drug to aid the commission of a felony. And she is someone who is well known to the authorities down there in New Orleans, and now her bond has been revoked as they continue to investigate her. And story number 6, I should say, this morning, a judge will hear arguments over Elon Musk's access to sensitive Treasury data. This is going to begin today in federal district court in Manhattan. And the judge will hear arguments over whether Elon Musk and Doge should be granted access to the Treasury Department's most sensitive payment and data systems. Of course, this is all part of an attempt to make the government more efficient, to find the waste, to find the fraud, to find the abuse. And something tells me this judge is going to rule a certain way, and then they'll have to keep fighting this in court, at least for now. So there you go with the 6 at 6 on KCMO. Coming up next, Kansas U.S. Senator Roger Marshall on Bobby Kennedy's confirmation getting approved, and also what tariffs may look like for Kansans if they do come to fruition. Trump putting a pause on those yesterday, saying he's going to study reciprocal tariffs all over the world. So basically, if you charge us a 10% tariff, we're going to hit you with a 10% tariff. What does that mean for Kansans? Roger Marshall is next. Well, he was one of the biggest champions of Bobby Kennedy becoming the next Health and Human Services Secretary, and he is Kansas U.S. Senator Roger Marshall joining us on a Friday on KCMO 95.7 FM. Senator, good morning. Thank you for being here as always. We appreciate the time. And Bobby Kennedy got across the finish line, and what do you want to see him do here starting on day one?
Yeah, Pete, it was one of the better days I've had in Congress. We got a Secretary of Agriculture confirmed. We got Bobby Kennedy across the finish line as well. I think Bobby's priorities are to make America healthy again and to address the chronic diseases. What he's going to start with is just radical transparency. We have all this data sitting there at HHS, in the CDC, NIH, and we don't share it. They only share what they want you to see. So I think radical transparency and then gold standard research with replication. So if I did a research project and I found that seed oils are healthy, then I want you to do research and figure it out rather than me replicating it. So I think we need to sort out the wheat from the chaff and figure out what's making America sick. Certainly, we think it has something to do with the processed foods that we eat. 70% of the calories that Americans ingest are ultra-processed food. We think that's part of it. We think there's also toxins that we're exposed to from the environment. So our focus is to make America healthy again.
So put on that doctor's hat. I mean, there was a lot of, and there still is a lot of screaming and yelling about how everyone's going to be walking around unvaccinated, passing on, polio and measles and the whole thing. Clearly, you have no concerns on that. And what did it take for you as a doctor to feel totally comfortable with Bobby Kennedy in that role based on some of the previous things he has said about various vaccines?
Yeah, so over the Christmas break, I read 2 of his books. I spent days reading everything he said, podcasts, everything for the past several years. We had several meetings. We talked to each other over the phone over the Christmas break as well, and just figuring out what's on his heart. And this person, like he said, for 20 years, he's woke up every morning and said, God, give me the opportunity to impact this chronic disease, especially that the children are suffering from. And I think it's his heart that turned me, that he's absolutely, and he's just a unique individual. Pete, you and I meet some really unique people, but he has something special. It's hard for me to describe what it is, but he's going to be able to do and say things as HHS secretary that I couldn't do. He is just Teflon. Like Donald Trump is Teflon, Bobby Kennedy is Teflon. He just wakes up in the morning with this theory of radical transparency. He has a lifetime of experiences, and he's so committed to getting this job done.
So how about, you mentioned some of the things in our food, the processing, the dyes. I know that, red dye number 3 is going to be banned here. I think the deadline is sometime next year, or maybe it's 2 years from now. How much of that can he do, or is that stuff that's going to take more than just like Bobby Kennedy deciding it needs to happen? What would that process be like?
Look, the FDA, Dr. Marty McCary, I just had him in the office a couple of days ago, will be the FDA nominee, and he's a person that can go through and start raising the standards. So we have the legislation to improve those standards as well. The way it happened is like this red dye, for instance, was approved 40, 50 years ago, and the FDA has not looked at it since. Do you think we've learned anything the last 40 or 50 years about carcinogens? We probably have. So right now, what we would like to do is have those tested probably every 10 years, rather than once it's done, it's done. And this is what my friends across the aisle got wrong. Science has never settled. Science has never settled. There's so many things that we thought we were doing right 40 years ago, and guess what? We were wrong. And there's things we're doing today that are wrong as well. So I think there's a lot of things that they can do right there, just emphasizing the F in FDA, which is food. It's not federal, Vice President Harris. It's food is what the F in FDA stands for. So we need to emphasize that and bring it back to the forefront. Approving these drugs, that's important too. But the food part's just not as sexy. So he can do a lot, but we've got a job to do as well, and we're hard at work on it.
Kansas U.S. Senator Roger Marshall's here on KCMO. I know that yesterday when Bobby Kennedy was sworn in as America's health secretary, President Trump even talked about, listen, autism not that long ago was 1 in 10,000. Now it's 1 in, 40, I think it is, give or take. As a doctor, how much of that is just, catching up with the diagnosis of autism versus something else happening that we don't really have any idea what it is, and we're not able to pinpoint it.
Yeah, Pete, you know that we don't know, right? And we should know. We spend all this money researching viral gain of function, $2 billion a year researching viral gain of function. We teach China how to make the COVID virus, but we don't spend any money addressing what you just described. What we do know is that somewhere about 2006, 2007, that we had a huge jump in not just autism, but just mental illnesses in general, ADHD, all these different things, that 20% of our youth are now on some type of a prescription drug, most of them for mental health at some point. And, I think that social media is a big part of that, to be honest. I think that these kids that went through puberty with the social media on an iPhone is a big part of it. You look at every developed country across the world, and they had this same jump, but the undeveloped countries without iPhones didn't have it. So I think that there is a nutrition component. No matter what you have, I think that nutrition components exacerbate it. ADHD, for instance, you've probably seen this too. Families were just literally changed the diet, took the children off the sugar, and they were able to get them off their medication. So I think it's all the above, but that's what Bobby is committed to doing. I just spoke with Dr. Oz and Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who's going to be the NIH person as well, having these same conversations. And we've been having these conversations, several of us, for like 4 or 5 years. So now we got the chance to prioritize where we're spending our research dollars. And Pete, I want to find out the answer.
Yeah, that would be welcomed for sure. All right. I want to ask you also, Senator, because this could have an impact on Kansas farmers and obviously just, every American when it comes to consumption of goods and services. The reciprocal tariffs that the president laid out a plan for yesterday, I guess this will take a couple of months to determine which countries we may hit with reciprocal tariffs. If they have a 10% tariff on us, we'll basically have a 10% tariff on them. Do you like that plan better than what was going to be rolled out, which was, I guess, more or less tariffs across the board? And if so, what concerns, if any, do you have for Kansas farmers and Kansans at large?
Look, the president is committed to taking care of farmers. He understands rural America. 90% of them voted for him. In all of his policies, he's not going to do something that harms the farmer long term. The first set of tariffs, the ones on China, Canada, and Mexico, were strictly a national security issue to say, look, you've got to start patrolling your border. You've got to stop sending us fentanyl. Now, the reciprocal tariffs, so we can't put these all in one lump. I think these reciprocal tariffs, is what's fair. Isn't it fair that if the EU is going to charge 25% tariff on American cars, that we're only charging 2% on theirs? Don't you think it should be reciprocal and fair? I think in the long term, it's going to bring jobs back to America and the manufacturing jobs at that. And in the long run, President Trump is absolutely committed to sorting all this out. Remember, under Joe Biden, he did not do one free trade agreement. Donald Trump gave us so much. He gave us USMCA, South Korea, Japan, China phase 1. But as soon as Biden gets in there, the trade with China goes down. So there may be some short-term pain for long-term gain. And lastly, Pete, I'll say this. We can't look at tariffs in silos. You can't look at any of these issues in silos. President Trump is committed to helping us out with the biofuel industry. He came out with an executive a statement on that just yesterday as well. The biggest problem the farmers have right now is the interest rates. They got $1 million operation loan, and their interest went from 2% to 9% under Joe Biden, and it's sticky, right? Those interest rates are sticky right now. We got to crack that code, and happy to come back and talk about inflation someday.
Oh, I know. I mean, there's. Listen, this is it's a great time for America, but it's a great time for us. We're getting like 3 news cycles a day, Senator. I could keep you for another 20 minutes, and we still have stuff to talk about. So.
Yes, sir.
We will do it again soon. We're grateful for your time, and have a great weekend.
Yeah, thanks, Pete.
All
Have
right.
a great weekend.
You
Bye-bye.
as well. Roger Marshall on KCMO 95.7 FM. It's just nuts. I could have gotten to 3 other things with them, and we'd be sitting here at 7:30, and Mark would be yelling at me about hitting the brakes. We got the Bill O'Reilly morning update coming up. O'Reilly is going to be on the show at 8:30 this morning, so make sure you're tuned in then on KCMO Talk Radio. As always, we are streaming at KCMOTalkRadio.com.
If it's happening in KCMO, it's on KCMO 95.7 FM. Here's Pete Mundo.
This is the gift that just keeps on giving. Emmanuel Cleaver, Kansas City congressman, is now bragging about his goofy viral clip from a couple of days ago outside of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. His team is actually promoting that absurd, nonsensical rant that he went on against Elon Musk. Like, they think this makes him look good. I kid you not. This is from the Facebook page, and somebody tagged me in this yesterday, from the Cleaver for Congress Facebook page. And I thought to myself, maybe it's like a fan page. You know, not that there would be like many people on the fan page. Be like, you know, Cleaver's kid and a couple other people. But no, this is the official campaign page for Emmanuel Cleaver. And they share the YouTube video of Cleaver sending a message, as they put it, to Elon Musk. And the caption on Cleaver's Facebook page reads as follows. The CFPB has saved taxpayers millions of dollars since its inception. That's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And operates at a fraction of that cost. If Elon Musk and President Trump were truly on the side of the American taxpayer, they'd keep their hands off of it. And they share the YouTube link to this awful rant that made absolutely no sense.
Elon, take your musty millions and musty Moscow rights to the moon. Because if you don't, we're going to stand up, we're going to speak out, we're going to march, we're going to do anything we need to do to make sure that the people of this country understand that the CFPB is for them. You get your musty hands off of our money or go to Moscow. You musty moon. You musty moon.
We got the farm animal noises from Congressman Cleaver this week. It's gone viral, and now he's bragging about that rant. You see, any normal person would be like, oh, that was kind of embarrassing. I kind of lost my cool there, and that didn't make much sense now, did it? But Cleaver's Facebook page yesterday shared the YouTube link to the rant and is bragging about said rant. If that's the best you can do, if that's supposed to be a rant that is like supposed to impress your constituents, then boy, the bar sure is low around here when it comes to the 5th Congressional District. I happen to think we can do better. And I love how, well, I don't love it, but he does kind of share what he really thinks about your tax dollars when he says, keep your hands off our money. Now, hold on a second there, chump. It ain't your money. It's my money. It's your money as you're driving to work to pay taxes to the federal government. It is your money. It is our money. It is not Emmanuel Cleaver's money. It is not the government's money. The government doesn't have anything without us. It doesn't create anything without the private sector. So for Cleaver to take the approach of, yeah, it's our money. No, it's not. And it's not the minions in the bureaucracies and the federal government's money either. You are servants of the people. Let's not forget that, okay? I know there's this notion that we work for you, but no, you work for us. If you want to get back into the private sector, you know, maybe you can open a car wash somewhere and do it that way. But as long as you're going to keep that job in D.C., you work for us. That's how this works. The text line is 913-4087-957. John?
I think down at the local bar, the happy hour should feature a Moscow mule. On special today. Moscow mule.
Mule. Oh, man. I'm taking Kate out for dinner tonight. I'll order one of those. Give me a Moscow moo. I'll just start making cow noises when I walk in and start ordering my first drink. On the text line, Pete, please stop playing the Cleaver rant. It's making me sick. Now, why is it making you sick? It's one of the funniest things I've heard this year. And it's a guy who's been representing Kansas City and arguably embarrassing Kansas City for years. And no one heard from Cleaver during Joe Biden's 4 years in office. I didn't see him anywhere doing anything. Did you? And now, 23 days in the Trump, he's given these unhinged, bizarre rants and he's making animal noises. This is a gem, man. I mean, it's just crazy.
You mustard moo moo moo.
I don't know what it is. You don't know what it is. All I know is it's wildly entertaining. And I will sign up for that every single day because, gosh, we need some laughs around here. I'll tell you that right now. Oh, my goodness. Now, on that note, there was a new poll that came out yesterday on what people want from their parties, specifically one side. And there was a very notable figure that also just, lambasted his own side. And I will share it right after the news. Pete Mundo on KCMO.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
Will they ever listen? I hope they do for their sake. I think it's better for the country if they listen, but I'm not convinced that anybody will listen. TheHill.com writing here, in a Gallup poll released yesterday, Democrats today are more likely to say they want their party to become more moderate than they were 4 years ago.
Talk about a bombshell.
Who would have ever seen that coming? Said everybody with common sense sarcastically. So I play this, and I'll share this story in the wake of, Emmanuel Cleaver's bizarre rant from outside of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau the other day, where he's ranting and raving about how dare Donald Trump try to shrink the size of government, how dare he bring in Elon Musk to try to find waste and fraud and abuse from the taxpayer dollar. It's like, dude, this is pretty popular stuff across the board, and you guys are totally missing the boat here. You have an opportunity to get on board and moderate yourselves and say, okay, you know what? Let's just try to do this, but also protect what we want to protect the agencies we want to protect, but also understand that, you know what? People are down with this. It's pretty popular. Instead, Cleaver's going on these unhinged rants, and then he's bragging about it on his Facebook page.
You mustard move.
Roof, roof, roof. That's Mark when he gets home later today. Hoof, hoof, hoof. Oink, oink, oink. Get any oinking in there, Mark, at the house, or you're not an oinker?
We did just get a little new pig toy.
Oh, you did?
This last week,
so you'll be oinking away this weekend.
We'll get some oinks going.
All right. Maybe that'll be Cleaver next week. We need Cleaver to start oinking. Make him squeal like a pig,
There you go.
So you've got now 45% of Democrats in this new Gallup poll released yesterday who say they want their party to become more moderate. This is up from 40 years ago when 34% of Democrats said they wanted their party to become more moderate. Now, here's the problem. Normal people get polled in these polls, but normal people are not the loudest voices on social media, and they're not the loudest voices on network news, and they're not the loudest voices on cable news. And this is what's going to make it a very difficult balancing act for their party. Their party has massive problems in rural areas. They're getting clobbered in rural areas. Republicans also made gains in urban areas. I mean, heck, you saw places like Brooklyn, New York, and Queens, New York move to the right for Donald Trump in this last election cycle. You've had massive gains with the Hispanic community in the Republican Party. You've had not as big of gains, but some gains also in the black communities as well. So they're literally getting better in basically every demographic except for old white people. They're the ones, ironically, shifting to the left. When people used to always say, oh, that's the bread and butter of the Republican Party. It's just a bunch of old white people. Well, that's not happening. That demographic is actually shifting left. Remember that CBS News poll we shared over the weekend, based on age, the age bracket that approved of Donald Trump the least was 65 plus. Trump was plus 10 with 18 to 29-year-olds. He was up 8 with 35 to 44-year-olds. And then 45 to 64, he was like plus 12. The 65 plus is where he was 50-50. That's wild. And part of it to me, too, is like, okay, Trump's 78 years old. I get it. He's an old guy. But who's like the macho man right now in the Democratic Party? Who's the cool face of the Democratic Party? You guys are laughing in there because you know that person doesn't exist. Like Chuck Schumer's out there, look at my avocado, Corona's going up. Oh my gosh, your Super Bowl party's not going to be the same. I hope the Chiefs score a goal. What, is Mayor Pete your macho man? Who is it? Obama's nowhere to be found. No one's seen Obama in weeks since the inauguration, and outside of that, Jimmy Carter's funeral. Obama's checked out. You see men, leaving Democratic Party in droves. Like, where's your Trump's 78, but he's a cultural phenomenon, right? That really goes beyond looking at the guy and saying he's 78 years old. And considering he's basically the same age as Joe Biden, he feels like he's 20 years younger than the guy. So it does go back to the old adage and cliche of age just being a number. But where is their face? Where is their future? Where is their little bit of macho man mentality that can connect with especially young men right now, but I would just say young people in general? That doesn't exist for them. And I saw this clip from Jon Stewart. You know, Jon Stewart's been a lifelong Democrat, and he was on his show, his podcast yesterday, and he compared the Democratic Party right now to his beloved New York Giants.
Do the Giants feel like the Democratic Party in that the personnel decisions that everything that they are doing could not work out more humiliatingly and continues to do so. And I don't know what kind of a draft pick the Democrats are going to get this year. I don't even know if there's a draft lottery in politics or any of those kinds of things. But boy, they better clean their shit up if they want to compete, because the ass kicking that's been laid upon them in all aspects sometimes feels like a permanent state.
Now, to use his football analogy, here's the problem. Politics is much more like college football than it is the NFL, in the sense that if your team stinks in the NFL, you get the top draft pick, right? That's how it works. That's why the Chiefs continue to have one of the last picks in the NFL draft. The idea is to create equity. Well, that's not the case in politics. In fact, it's more like college football in the sense that the best teams just get the double down and oftentimes can get the best recruits. Right now, would you rather be recruiting to the Democratic Party or to the Republican Party? Based on the leadership that you see every single day, based on the bench that is out there. There is no bench right now in the Democratic Party. I mean, they're talking about Kamala Harris giving it another run in 2028. I mean, that is a comically awful idea. Stephen A. Smith is getting talked about as a presidential candidate on the Democratic side of the aisle. Meantime, you look at the Republicans when Trump's done here in 4 years, and obviously J.D. Vance comes to mind, but I mean, there's half a dozen people. You're still going to be talking about Ron DeSantis, Marco Rubio. I mean, and all these people are like under the age of 50 for the most part.
What do we know about the definition of insanity relative to the Democrats?
Yeah, let's do the same thing over and over and over again.
Expecting a different result.
And expect a different result. That is exactly what they're appearing to double down on, despite the fact that their voters are saying, hey, moderate a bit, calm down a little bit on some of the social craziness. That's what the Gallup poll came out with yesterday. Their own voters want them to moderate. But there are people right now who are not willing to look in the mirror and say, here's what we've done wrong. Here's what we have to do to start connecting with regular working class voters again. They had that voter on lockdown up until about 5 years ago, 10 years ago maybe. And they are just hemorrhaging them left and right to appeal to the MSNBC crowd that I promise you is not growing in size, and it's very old. Of all the cable networks in demo, that's what media outlets try to get, 25 to 54-year-olds. I'm not saying we don't love you if you're over 54 years old. We have members of the show who are over 54 years old. I won't name them, but you know who they are.
Thank you.
I'm just saying the coveted age demographic for any media outlet is 25-54. MSNBC has the smallest 25 to 54-year-old audience in cable news when you stack up the big three, CNN, Fox, and MSNBC. And Fox's in-demo audience is double, at least in January, CNN and MSNBC's combined number. Younger people are flocking to Fox and they are fleeing MSNBC. And that is just another warning sign that should be going off in the party saying, you know what? What do people want right now, especially people who can be voters for years and decades to come? and they're not doing themselves any favors. Coming up, we are going to talk about this announcement yesterday that came down from a judge in the Kansas City area who said to the city of Kansas City, Missouri, hey, you guys that are trying to force Section 8 vouchers onto landlords, no. They put a pause on that. And we'll talk to Stacey Johnson Cosby about that coming up on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Now, are you thinking about a tub or a new shower? Well, if so, there's one name to know in Kansas City. It's The Plumbing Pro. For over 40 years, The Plumbing Pro has been the go-to plumber right here in Kansas City, with Steve and his crew doing outstanding work, but they're also the new bath pro. You see those national personalities on TV always talking about their tub and shower replacements. Well, The Plumbing Pro is the local alternative to those national tub and shower replacement ads. And right now with Pete's deal, you can get $2,000 off and 12 months same as cash with approved credit. Save money and time. They're easy to work with, low stress, free consultation, and of course, they're local. Get that Pete's deal offer right now. $2,000 off and 12 months same as cash. 816-763-8200 or theplumbingpro.com. That's the best way to get them. Theplumbingpro.com.
Hey, it's Dan Bongino. You're listening to Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, now on FM at 95.7.
Yesterday, a federal district court in Kansas City issued a preliminary injunction suspending the city's ban on what the city is calling landlord discrimination of renters using vouchers to help pay their rent. We're now happy to have on Stacy Johnson Cosby. She is the president of the Kansas City Regional Housing Alliance. I know you're very happy with this decision, Stacy. So why is that?
Well, because common sense prevails finally. And so the city thought they were going to force us to do business with people that we didn't want to. And in this particular case, with the Section 8 voucher, it would force us to actually enter into a contract with the federal government against our will. How dare them?
So for those who will say, as the mayor and others will say in this case, well, listen, we have discrimination laws. You can't not rent to people because of their skin color, their sexual orientation. If they've got the money to pay, whether it's through a voucher or not, why would you not want them as a tenant? How would you compare those two things, and what would you respond to the mayor or other advocates with?
One thing that they said is that this is guaranteed income. It's just like someone with a paycheck. And we know that a governmental program is not like someone with a paycheck. And we saw that a few weeks ago when there was fear that some governmental programs were going to be cut. Section 8 was one of those talked about. So imagine if the federal government stopped funding a program, then we would be stuck with someone in our properties that could not pay their rent. So it is not guaranteed. And any housing provider or landlord that chooses to do business with the government takes that risk knowingly and willingly. In this particular case, the city thought they were going to force us to work with a high-risk renter against our will.
Mm-hmm. So now, I mean, this came to be, gosh, was this 2 years ago or last year? When did this become a thing in Kansas City?
It was last year in August.
Okay, it was last August. So was it being implemented by the city, or was it going through the legal process so it had not technically been implemented yet?
Well, it passed early in 2024 and went into effect August 1st. And when they introduced it, they had not, the city council had not sat down to talk to us, the housing providers that would be the ones participating in the program. They also didn't talk to the housing authority who would be administering the vouchers. And they were doing all of this at the behest of a tenant socialist group, people who have never owned a single rental house or a property in their lives create city policies. And this tenant group, socialist group, goes to city council, and the city council says, okay, we'll do what you want, without talking to the rest of us in the actual marketplace. And this is what happens when they try to work around the market and the players in the market.
Was that the KC Tenant organization you're referring to there that they listened to?
That is correct. And you'll see KC Tenants posting on Twitter and on social media that there is no housing policy that passed in this city without their approval. And I can't argue with them. The council is beholden to this group who do not create housing for some reason. They won't work with us, but they'll work with a socialist group, and it doesn't make sense.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Is it fear, or perhaps they agree with them?
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you too, Pete, there's something else, the other part of the ordinance that didn't get struck down that's just as bad, and it requires us to work with high-risk renters. So it says that we cannot discriminate against someone who's had a previous eviction. And we know that 90% of evictions are for people who didn't pay their rent. So we can't discriminate against them. We can't discriminate against people with bad credit or low credit score, or prior property damage, or a criminal or arrest history. And if we're found, this is the part that people don't realize, if we're found guilty of discriminating against these groups, then we could be fined $1,000, lose our business permit, and go to jail for up to 6 months. That is a law in place in Kansas City today, and it doesn't make sense. And they think this is creating more housing. It's causing us to leave the marketplace and hold our units off market because we don't want to end up at the Civil Rights Department being investigated.
So that law still exists and is separate from the decision yesterday by the federal court.
That's exactly right. The federal court only addressed the Section 8 voucher part of it, but the rest of it still stands. And we could go to jail for denying someone who doesn't pay their bills or has bad credit. Can you imagine any other scenario or any other business where that would be the case? and we're in a housing crisis? Wrong answer.
Do you know landlords who are leaving or have left Kansas City due to these new rules and regulations?
Absolutely. And every time the tenant group and the council come up with laws, this is the third time. Every time they come up, we lose people. As a matter of fact, my husband and I had a unit. We've already sold some units directly as a result of their policies. And out-of-state investors bought every single unit that we sold. And the rents went up and our previous tenants went out. And so they're having the opposite effect that they claim that they want. And they will not sit down and work with us on common sense answers. Because the answer to this source of income, for example, Johnson County, their housing authority incentivizes landlords to participate. They'll give you a bonus for signing up at the program and cover any repairs. And as a result, in less than 2 years, they've housed over 500 families by incentivizing. So Kansas City penalizes, Johnson County incentivizes, and the incentives are working, and yet we can't do that. We mandate instead.
Wow. Okay. So now the city also said, or the mayor said here in a statement yesterday, this is Stacey Johnson Cosby joining us, president of the Kansas City Area Housing Alliance. The actions taken by landlords, that would be you, to challenge the programs in court and in Jeff City jeopardize housing access for 17,000 Kansas Cityans waiting for housing vouchers. That leaves 17,000 Kansas Cityans still looking for a stable place to live in our city. How would you respond to being the big bad landlord being referred to there?
Okay. First of all, we're not. And secondly, the actual figure is 29,000 on the wait list. And I know that because we're in touch with the housing authority. And our goal is to help them get people off the wait list. But that number is just the long-term list. There's a smaller number of people that actually have vouchers in hand on the street looking for housing. And so his numbers are wrong. And if he would talk to the housing authority or work with us, we'll say, here are the correct numbers, but here's our plan to help the high-risk renter find housing. Because our goal, we're in business to house people. That's our business. And so we make money, and we're not a nonprofit. We make money when we can get tenants to live in our properties. And so work with the person that is actually looking to house people. That's us. Mm-hmm. Instead of demonizing us, which they constantly do, work with us. We are working. We're working together to try to house high-risk renters for those who choose to, but we are not obligated. We're not a charity. We are a business.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing, too, because the KC tenants groups that rail on like big corporate landlords, they don't realize that, this whole policy is running off mom and pop landlords, and all that's going to be left is corporate landlords who can fight this stuff in court. So they don't even realize they're shooting themselves in the foot. Stacey, thank you so much for being here.
All right. Thank you, Pete. Have a great warm day.
You as well. That is Stacey Johnson Cosby, president of the Kansas City Area Housing Alliance on KCMO. Coming up, Kansas City Star's coverage of the Andrew Lester decision is typical, and next. Oh, it's so predictable from the Kansas City Star. 8:05, happy Friday. Glad you're here on KCMO 95.7 FM. We will have Bill O'Reilly on the show in 30 minutes, so make sure that you are here for the conversation with Bill O'Reilly at 8:35. You can stream that on the KCMO Talk Radio app or, of course, right here on 95.7 FM. So yesterday we found out that Andrew Lester, the 86-year-old man who shot Ralph Yarl back in April of 2023 up in the Northland when Yarl accidentally showed up to his home and at the wrong house trying to pick up his brother from, whatever you want to call it, hanging out with friends or a play date, whatever it was. He was supposed to go to trial in the next few days, and he was supposed to basically plead not guilty and make his case. Well, Andrew Lester is now scheduled to appear in court today, and sources are saying he's expected to enter a guilty plea. Fox 4 had it first here in Kansas City, and that's obviously a big shock to the system because for, almost 2 years now, since this happened in April of 2023, it was expected that Lester was going to make his case. And his defense team was saying, hey, this is going to be very tough for the state to prove. He was previously charged with assault and armed criminal action from that shooting in 2023. And now it looks like he is going to enter a guilty plea later today. So, of course, this story became a national and really an international story because of the race involved. Let's be very clear. That's it. Ralph Yarl, thank goodness, is alive, despite being shot in the head. I mean, it's a miracle that he's alive, and everyone is glad that he is alive. It's a tragedy. We don't know what exactly happened at that door. Yarl says he was just there looking for his brother. Lester claims that, he was banging on the door and shaking the door handle and the whole thing, and the reality is we'll never know. But this became a story because of the race of people involved. And the Kansas City Star could not help itself 4 paragraphs into its story here, where they write, Lester, who is white, faces first-degree assault and armed criminal action charges in the shooting of Yarl, who is black. After the teen mistakenly went to the wrong home in Kansas City's Northland to pick up his brothers on April 13th of 2023. They're admitting shamelessly why this is a story. It's not, hey, Andrew Lester faces first-degree assault and armed criminal action charges in the shooting of Ralph Yarl. They specifically go on to note, they're not even hiding the fact that the only reason they care about the story is because Andrew Lester's an old white guy and Ralph Yarl is a young black kid. You would at least maybe pretend that you're just treating this as a news story for the news story that it is, but they're admitting 3-4 paragraphs in that the only reason this thing reached the level of interest that it did is because it drove a narrative around race. That's it. And here's some of what Fox 4 also reported last night.
The story garnering national and international attention as the question was raised, did race play a role in this case? Something the family believes, but neither the state or defense introduced in this process.
So the family believes. You heard there in the Fox 4 report. How can you know what is in somebody else's heart when it comes to race? How? How could you possibly have the audacity to say, I know that Andrew Lester shot Ralph Yarl because he's a racist and Ralph Yarl is black? And why does the media just report that they think he's a racist, so therefore we're going to report that they think he's a racist? Maybe he is. I don't know the man. He's 86 years old, never met the guy. I'm never going to meet the guy, most likely. Unless he wants to come do an exclusive interview here in the studio, in which case, we'll take that. But I never reached out to him, don't know him. He may be a racist. But to do a news report and say, the family believes that race was a motivating factor. No, let's be very clear here. And I'm going to say something that no one else will say in this town because they're afraid to say it. The reality is this. It was beneficial to the family to allege race was a motivating factor. There are 3.5 million reasons for the family to allege race was a motivating factor. They raised $3.5 million on their GoFundMe. Sorry, $3.478 million. My bad. One of Ralph Yarl's aunts organized this and got generational money out of it. I would argue they sadly used the poor kid for this. Now, I hope the money all goes to Ralph Yarl and he can use it for college and whatever else. But listen, there are people who played up the race thing for monetary reasons. Do you remember when Sean Brady was killed a few months ago? Sean Brady is the guy who owned Brady and Fox restaurant in Brookside. And his car was getting burglarized by a couple of young thugs. And he got shot and killed trying to stop him. There was a GoFundMe for Sean Brady. Want to know how much money that GoFundMe raised? $2,300. $2,300 for Sean Brady's GoFundMe. Sean Brady lost his life. Now, thank goodness Ralph Yarl's alive. But Sean Brady lost his life, left behind a couple of kids and a wife. And his GoFundMe has $2,300 in it. Ralph Yarl, who thank goodness and thank God is alive, has $3.5 million in his GoFundMe. And the races are reversed, right? Allegations are Sean Brady was shot and killed by a young black male. He's a middle-aged white guy. You don't think playing up the race on the other side is something that benefited the family to the tune of potentially $3.5 million in a GoFundMe and an international news story? Please. I'm not stupid. But this is the world that we've created, right? It's the world that the media wants to live in. When stories fit their racial narratives and preferred narratives, they make them national stories. That's what prevents a local crime story from becoming a national and international news story. We have, homicides every day in this town. It's not nearly. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but we have far too many. We're 2 years removed from a record year for homicides in Kansas City. The bulk of them never get attention. Now you sit here and you say to yourself, well, this one got international attention and technically no one died. It's a tragedy. We're all glad that Ralph Yarl's alive, but let's not kid ourselves on why this story came to be the story that it was. And it's something that no one in media is willing to say because it makes them uncomfortable. 913-408-7957, 913-408-7957. It's 8:14 on KCMO Talk Radio on a Friday. Bill O'Reilly is going to be here in 20 minutes. Do not miss that conversation. Streaming, as always, on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM.
Wow, great note on the text line. And I did not see this until I reread the article in the Kansas City Star about Andrew Lester, the 86-year-old man who was set to begin trial in the next few days for shooting Kansas City teen Ralph Yarl back in April of 23. Pete, let me guess. In the Kansas City Star article, when they call Andrew Lester white, they use a lowercase w. And when they call Ralph Yarl black, they use a capital B. And that's what they did. They write here in the Star, Lester, who is white, faces first-degree assault and armed criminal action charges in the shooting of Yarl, who is black. White is lowercase w. Black is uppercase B. It doesn't even make sense. I don't even get it. Either they're both lowercase or they're both uppercase. I'm looking at this right now in front of me. It's an outstanding observation on the text line, and I don't know if that's like AP style now, since the AP's gone woke as anybody, but I'm looking at it here with my own two eyes, Mark.
I just looked that up. In 2020, it says AP style is now capitalizing black in racial connotation. White is lowercase.
Oh, my gosh. That may be, listen, we did a lot of stupid things in 2020, right? Got rid of Uncle Ben, got rid of Aunt Jemima. Someday we're going to be like, wait, we celebrated social justice by taking off prominent black people from rice boxes and syrup containers. What world were we living in? I didn't realize that came down in 2020 as well. So that changed in 2020 is what you're telling me, Mark, based on the article you're looking at right in front of you.
Yeah, it says in July of 2020, it says there's less support for capitalizing white.
Oh, my gosh.
Just can't do it.
Just
can't push shift and W.
Oh, the white guilt dripping out of the AP reporter's veins. Oh, my gosh. Wow. I missed that. Listen, there was so much craziness going on then. Even I couldn't keep up, apparently, doing this 4 hours a day. Wow. Man, oh, man, oh, man. That is something else. Well, nice job on the text line. I learned something new today from you guys. That's why you're the best audience in Kansas City. That is very well done. Unbelievable. All right. Well, Bill O'Reilly's going to be here in just over 10 minutes on KCMO. And I'm going to talk to him a lot about DOGE, what's going on the first 3.5 weeks of the Trump administration. And here's the thing. This is something that I think Sharice Davids on the Kansas side of the state line and Emmanuel Cleaver need to get on board with very quickly. They need to stop pretending like there's not fraud in the government. There is. And instead of Emmanuel Cleaver making farm animal noises as he's, protesting outside of bureaucratic buildings.
You mustard move, move, move,
move, move, move, move, move, move, huff, 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 oink, 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 oink. Instead of doing that, instead of Sharice Davids sending me emails this week asking me how I think the government should address the nation's budget, should we entrust billionaire Elon Musk? Or should we do it through bipartisan compromise? At least admit that there is plenty of proof of government fraud. And don't take Donald Trump's word for it. Don't take Elon Musk's ex-posts for it. Take Joe Biden's word for it. The Wall Street Journal had a piece this morning, and in this piece they note a government accountability office reported last spring. Now, who was in office last spring? What was that guy's name again? Oh, gosh, what was it?
Come on, man.
Brandon? Is that what his name was? Brandon? Is that what he went by? Well, a government accountability office report last spring estimated the federal government could lose between $233 billion and $521 billion annually to fraud. The federal audit said, quote, a government-wide approach is required to address it, and recommended the Treasury leverage data analytics capabilities to stop questionable payments. That is exactly what DOGE is trying to do. The Government Accountability Office has also estimated that 11 to 15% of unemployment benefits during the pandemic were fraudulent, totaling between $100 and $135 billion. Some went to transnational gangs, prisoners, and state-sponsored hackers. The Labor Department Inspector General estimated at least $191 billion in improper pandemic unemployment payments. The Secret Service found hackers linked to the Chinese government stole at least $20 million in COVID benefits. The IRS paused processing of new employee retention tax credits claims in 2023 because of rampant fraud. Initial estimates were $55 billion in fraud. Now the program's costs have ballooned to $230 billion and counting. So this has been well out there for years that there's fraud in the government. Everyone knows it. Elon Musk has been tasked with trying to clean it up. And instead of having these bizarre rallies with Chuck Schumer and Maxine Waters and Emmanuel Cleaver here in Kansas City, and these fear-mongering emails from Sharice Davids about, oh, we can't possibly have somebody like Elon Musk trying to find fraud in the government, just admit there's fraud and actually try to get on board with it to some degree and try to mold this thing as you'd like to see it unfold. Try to mold this Doge idea in a way that makes you look more moderate instead of denying what every Republican and Democrat voter in this country knows to be true. And that is that there is fraud and there is waste in the government. And amazingly, I saw this. This was done, Arizona did this. There was an article here. I want to pull it up and make sure I have the right information for you. I just saw it here in the last couple of minutes. Oh, all right. Arizona swing voters were part of a focus group that Axios spoke with. They're a national news outlet. And they lean to the left. So just to be clear and transparent on that, Axios leans left. And they talked to a bunch of Arizona swing voters as part of a focus group focused on Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And Donald Trump's approval amongst these swing voters in this focus group in Arizona was 100%. And Elon Musk's was 73% with a 27% disapproval. What you're seeing on cable news and what you're seeing on social media from the left is not real life. This is not controversial. And they're totally missing the mark by doing what they're doing. They're looking completely out of touch. And at a time when they're hemorrhaging working class voters in particular, you want to be doubling down on this right now? You think that's a good idea? Whoever is advising these people needs to be fired immediately. Coming up next on KCMO, Bill O'Reilly is going to be here. I will ask him about the work of Doge and much more on 95.7 FM KCMO and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
From the nation's heartland, it's Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
Well, you hear him every morning at 7:15 with the morning update on KCMO. You now hear him every night at 8 p.m. His website, his show at BillO'Reilly.com is still doing outstanding, and Confronting the Presidents, I just looked it up, still right there on the New York Times bestseller list. Happy New Year after a few weeks to Bill O'Reilly. Bill, good morning. Thanks for being here on KCMO.
Anytime, Pete. This is week 22 that we've been on the Times list. Not a record. I had Killing Lincoln was more than a year, and Killing Kennedy right behind it. But that was a different time in America. People don't read as much now as they did then because of the dopey devices. That takes their time away from reading and learning.
Now, did I see as well, before we get to the news here, did I see Confronting Evil is the next book coming out from Bill O'Reilly later this year?
Yeah, in early September, Confronting the Evil, Assessing the Worst of the Worst. Tough list to cut down, but we got 12 of the worst people who ever lived, and it's quite a book. I'll tell you that. I'm just finishing the edit now.
Could you add the Philadelphia Eagles to that book, or is it too late to do that?
Ooh, look at that.
I know you were pulling for the Chiefs.
Maybe you can explain this to me, because I was surprised. I'm a football aficionado, played in college. It was obvious that the Kansas City Chief offensive line was having problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
Almost from the beginning of the game. And Mahomes had to he couldn't get into a rhythm. He couldn't do his check downs, they call it. He couldn't look at the second and third receiver because the Eagles would come in too quick. I thought Reed would roll him and move the pocket because Mahomes is so nimble. Give him a little bit more time, but he didn't do it until the third quarter. I couldn't figure it out.
No, I'm with you, Bill. It's something we've been trying to figure out all week. It's like it was very obvious after the first couple drives, they were not going to have much time in that backfield. And by the time they started doing it, it was too late. I mean, the game was a total bust.
And, when a quarterback gets out of rhythm, no matter who the quarterback is, then they start they're not stepping into the throws. They're not, everything gets discombobulated, and that's what happened to Mahomes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And now I think for some of us, though, it's like we know what the issue is. If they lost a close game, you might try to run it back with the same guys. They got to find a left tackle, Bill, desperately.
Yeah, they'll draft them. Kansas City is, I think, the best operation in the NFL. So I expect they'll be good again next year.
Well, speaking of efficient operations, got to get the Bill O'Reilly assessment of the work that Doge is doing so far on behalf of President Trump and the way that Elon Musk has kind of become the boogeyman for the left, even more so than the president. How surprised are you by that, Bill?
I'm not surprised at all. If you attach yourself to Donald Trump, then you're going to be public enemy number two. Trump will always be public enemy number one. And Musk delights in that, by the way. He likes people hating him, and so he antagonizes them just as Trump does. As far as his overall assessment, I cannot make an assessment yet of Elon Musk's effectiveness in the federal government. It's all headlines. I'm doing a big thing on Monday to tell my audience on the No Spin News and on our radio affiliates what's true and what isn't true, what we know to be true, and then what is, there's all kinds of rumors flying around. You heard the rumors about condoms to Gaza. That was not true. But the condoms to the Taliban is true. And so it's so foggy. And I'm trying to cut through that to say, okay, this is what they've uncovered so far. But once they get into DOE, Department of Education, and the Defense Department, my God, you're going to see unbelievable fraud in both of those agencies.
Now, with that, you look at how the Democrats are responding to this. They are acting like this is just a horrible thing that Elon Musk is looking, or anybody is looking for fraud. Do you think this is a political mistake for the Democratic Party to just come out against the idea of looking for fraud around the government?
Huge mistake. And the Cook Report, which is the inside predictor of elections, just came out this week and said if the midterms were held now, the Republicans would increase their advantage in the House and the Senate because Americans want spending reform. They don't want fraud. They don't want waste. And the Democratic Party has no solution. Obviously, Biden was the biggest spending president in the history of this country, and they cheered that on. And now they don't want to cut back anything, and Americans are going, no. So this is actually, Trump leads the Democratic Party into traps, and he's just led them into another trap. We don't want to have any government reform, and people will take it out on them.
Now, with that being said, to your point, I saw a report from Axios this morning, and it said that 45% of Democrats want to see their own party moderate. That's up 11 points from 4 years ago. And it seems like their own party's not getting the message. Do you get the sense that they're getting that message or no?
There is no message because there's no messenger. There's nobody in charge of the Democratic Party. There's no leader at all, none. So Barack Obama's retired. And who else is the leader of the party?
Yeah.
Chuck Schumer? I mean, come on. They have no leadership. And when you have no leadership, you have no direction. And that's where they are. They're all flailing around now. All the Democrats are flailing around. Now, if you live in a reliably blue state like California or Illinois or New York or Massachusetts, you'll maintain your seat. But as far as a national change in the Democratic Party's philosophy, you got to have somebody to drive that. And there's nobody. Nobody.
There isn't. I'm just thinking of who it could even be right now. Like who, Obama, does he even want to be that anymore? Or is he just checked out?
No, he's out of it. I said this, Pete, a year ago to you, everybody, Obama this, Obama that, Obama pulling the strings in the Biden administration, Obama. That was ridiculous. Yeah, he'll take your call if you're a big shot Democrat, and if you ask him his opinion, he'll give it to you.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not out there trying to organize anything. He's got 4 mansions, and he just flits from one to the other. He gives speeches overseas for $300,000 a pop. Michelle is, he's got to manage her. So he doesn't. He has no interest in day-to-day Democratic politics at all.
So they are just flailing. They don't have a direction. They don't have a leader. Is there anybody out there that strikes you as the person that it could be or should be right now?
That's a good question. I mean, Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, is a pretty bright guy. I think he's ambitious as well, but nobody knows him. And Klobuchar in Minnesota, the senator there, I think she's very smart. But neither of those two have the charisma to compete with Donald Trump or J.D. Vance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know where they go, what they do. Newsom's finished. He's got charisma with the hair and all that, but he's done. So where do you go?
Yeah.
If Trump can maintain improvement in this country, J.D. Vance will be the next president.
Mm-hmm. Now, Trump was asked that the other day, I think it was by Bret Baier in the Fox interview, is J.D. your obvious heir apparent? He said no. Is that just Trump kind of doing his thing and he doesn't want to guarantee anything to anybody, or is there something else to it?
Trump keeps everybody off balance.
Okay.
Everybody. So he tries it with me all the time, and I just laugh. Because I don't want anything from him.
Mm-hmm.
All I want is information, and I can get the information I want. But if he cuts off my information flow, I'll tell the audience, yes. But that has never happened. I've always been able to get information from the president. But do I want anything from him? No. So if he goes, you're unfair, I go, well, if you give me an example, I will assess that. But I never get an example.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think I'm pretty fair to him and everybody else.
Bill O'Reilly's on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. So, Bill, you mentioned last we spoke, you said that you visited with Trump. You had talked to him a couple of times towards the end of the year, and you felt he was sharper than ever. He has come out of the gates. I mean, just classic bull in a china shop, as cliche as it is. But are you even surprised by the pace at which this administration has moved through 3.5 weeks?
I don't know if surprise is the word. because I had no expectations of how he was going to govern. I knew because I was in a cabinet meeting on January 2nd. I think I told you about that in Mar-a-Lago. So I knew 18 days before he was sworn in that he had his guys already in place, and he had an agenda that they were working on in Florida before he came up to Washington. So I knew that. But it's a strategy. So the strategy is, and it's a brilliant strategy politically, throw so much against the wall that you're not going to get all of it, but you'll get a good portion of it because the people will be exhausted. They'll just give up and say, all right, we'll give him that if he doesn't. This is it. And you'll sow confusion every single day in the world of your opponents. And so it's a strategy. Just come out of the gate every morning and hit them with something they're not expecting, and they'll reel back. And when people are surprised, they often make mistakes. And that's what you're seeing. So it's a brilliant strategy that he's employing.
Well, with that being said, you look to overseas, Bill, and obviously that's something that Donald Trump has made a focus and did make a focus during the campaign, ending the Russia-Ukraine war and getting, a semblance of normalcy back to the Middle East, whatever that looks like. What do you think his next moves are going to be on each of those fronts?
Well, Ukraine ceasefire is coming. I think he'll get that. Guys go week to week. And they'll get some hostages here. They'll do this there. And Trump doesn't have much control over that. I mean, he says, yeah, we're going to take over Gaza, but that's not going to happen. So Gaza and that situation, I don't expect to see any kind of resolution. But I think Putin is really at the point now where he has to make a deal. And Putin is on the cover of Confronting Evil, by the way. He is an evil SOB, that guy. But Trump can deal with him, and I think that they will come to some kind of ceasefire, and then the cable news people will go wild, like they know anything. Come on. So other than that, it's a lot of bluster coming out of the White House now. Oh, we're going to take over Panama Canal. No, you're not. Greenland, no. Canada, 51st Street. No, that's not going to happen. But it's a strategy. Just throw all this stuff out there, and he'll get better deals on every front. Trump will, I predict.
Any of the cabinet picks, and they all look like they're going to get done, Bill, any of these cabinet picks that you have concerns about going into the administration?
A lot of them. I never would have voted for Hegseth or Bobby Kennedy. Tulsi I probably would have because that's more of a symbolic post. Shouldn't have any real power. Can you name who the Biden National Intelligence Director was?
No,
nobody can. Nobody knows.
No.
I don't even know if the guy knew that he was in charge.
Or if Joe did.
So Tulsi is, and I like her. So I probably would have voted for her, but not Hegseth or Kennedy. However, now that they're confirmed, give them a chance. I'm a fair man. Give them a chance. And the only reason they were confirmed, and actually Schumer had a good point last night. Schumer said, look, if it was a secret ballot, they wouldn't have been confirmed, and that's true. But the Republican senators are so afraid of Donald Trump because they don't want to be primaried that, if he says vote for this person, they're going to pretty much vote for that, except for Mitch McConnell doesn't give a fig anymore.
Yeah, McConnell and Trump's, listen, there's no love lost there. He took some swipes at him yesterday. So a guy like Mitch McConnell, I know, Bill, you had your dust-ups with him over the years. What is an end game for a guy like Mitch McConnell when he's falling all over the place in Washington, D.C.?
The cemetery. That's the end game for him.
I mean, what are we doing here?
He's going to pay it a visit, in a short period of time. So he knows it. And he's just saying, look, I'm going to go. I hate Trump. I'm going to go out and vote against anything he wants. So, look, I've never had any respect for him. He killed, as you know, Kate's Law.
Yeah.
Single-handedly killed it. That would have passed. That was the law that if you are a criminal alien and you are deported and you come back, you have mandatory federal prison sentence. Now, who wouldn't vote for that? Well, McConnell wouldn't even put it up for a vote. That's how bad he is. Anyway, so he's the only one in the Senate that Trump can't basically get his way with.
Interesting. Well, Bill, we're listening, obviously, in the mornings at 7:15 at night, 8 o'clock here on KCMO Talk Radio. Hear the No Spin News, and always look at that premium membership, BillO'Reilly.com. Confronting Evil is the next book out later this year, and can't wait for that with Confronting the President still sitting on the New York Times bestseller list. So, Bill, you're not slowing down one bit, huh? You're full steam ahead. I love it.
Yeah, and I'm right behind McConnell, so I got to get a lot of stuff done fast.
That's proof that age is just a number, Bill. I mean, look at Trump and Biden, right? Compare those two guys.
Yeah, that's true. It's a state of mind, no doubt about it.
It is. Well, thanks for everything.
Pete. Always a pleasure to talk with you.
You as well. Bill O'Reilly. Appreciate him on KCMO 95.7 FM. Always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Buy, sell, hold is coming up, and then our Feature Friday guest on KCMO.
Dave Ramsey here, and you're listening to Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, now airing on FM at 95.7.
It is a Friday morning on KCMO. Bill O'Reilly was great as always. It's that time of the week.
It's time to buy, sell,
How about it in 12 and a half, 15?
and hold.
All right, John, let her rip, big guy. What do you got for me there?
Buy, sell, or hold. Great companies won't function at peak efficiency with a work-at-home staff.
Oh, gosh. How quickly can I buy that? My gosh, this is outstanding. If you didn't hear Jamie Dimon, just real quick, I want to play part of his rant that leaked. It was a private phone call with JP Morgan Chase employees. Jamie Dimon's the CEO, and he just lit into the work-from-home mentality, and he's spot on here with this.
A lot of you were on the Zoom, and you were doing the following, okay? Looking at your mail, sending texts to each other about what an asshole the other person is, okay? Not paying attention, not reading your stuff, and if you don't think that slows down efficiency, creativity, creates rudeness, and stuff, it does, okay? And when I found out that people are doing that, you don't do that in my meetings. You go to meet with me, you got my attention, you got my focus, I don't bring my phone, I'm not sending texts to people.
There you go. I mean, it's another 2 minutes. It's up on my X page at Pete Mundo. You can see it there. But I love what I heard from Jamie Dimon. It's another swing back to the medium or the median from 2020 where everyone was like, we can work from home just as efficiently. We can just sit on Zoom all day. No, you can't. You got no creative juices. You got zero camaraderie that help businesses run efficiently and effectively. I'm all in, John. What's next?
Buy, sell, or hold. Elon Musk is a musty Moscow moo, moo, moo.
You muster moo, moo, moo.
Well, it's Cleaver, right? So I got to sell it. I mean, Cleaver's wrong about everything, including car washes. So I will sell that. He is not a musty moo, moo, moo. And Mark, I hope you keep the farm animal noises to a minimum in your house this weekend.
Thank you.
All right?
I'll try.
Don't be doing your Cleaver. I don't want to get reports from your neighbors. Mark sounded like Emmanuel Cleaver over the weekend.
You muster moo, moo, moo.
Moo, 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 moo. Yeah. Now, they have made Elon Musk the boogeyman. See, and what Bill O'Reilly said on the show, he's like, Musk is enemy number 2. I think Musk is becoming enemy number 1. Because they're admitting that Trump is fairly popular right now. He won the popular vote. He's got high approval numbers. They got to make Elon the unelected billionaire, the richest man in the world. They got to make him the boogeyman. That's why Sharice Davids is sending out emails about Elon, and Trump's name is never mentioned.
They'll even pick on his kid, Elon's kid.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're going after the kid now, sitting there in the Oval Office. It's like, oh, wow, we got kids in the Oval Office. You had Senate staffers poking each other in the Hart Building, okay? I mean, and taping themselves. Sleeping with each other. That's not even sleeping with each other. It's just, disgusting lewd acts. Literally in Senate offices. And now you're like offended by a little kid in the Oval Office? Get a grip, please. What's next?
Buy, sell, or hold. Travis Kelce will retire before next season.
Buy. I think he's done.
Wait, tell me what you really think.
Yeah.
Quick there.
I think he's finished. I do. And it's not that I want him to be. I just get the sense that he is done. Coming up, there's Buy, Sell, Hold. We're going to have our Feature Friday guest. He is absolutely outstanding. I think he's got a huge future in this town, and he joins me next.
you mustard moo moo moo.
Friday morning, just after 9 o'clock on KCMO. Happy to, as we always do each and every Friday, welcome in a Feature Friday guest. Get a little more long-form conversation with somebody in and around Kansas City. And this morning, we're happy to welcome on and say good morning to someone who you may be familiar with. I think a portion of the audience will know Johnny Calloway. He is now the Grassroots Engagement Director for Americans for Prosperity Missouri, and he joins us on KCMO. Johnny, good morning, my man. How are you?
I'm doing good, sir. How about yourself?
Well, you and I first met as a caller. Gosh, it must have been, 6 years ago, 5 years ago?
Yeah, about 5 years.
5 years ago. Yeah. All right. So now you're a social media influencer. I know that makes you blush, but I can use that word. You've racked up, millions of views on different videos on YouTube. I know you were canceled during COVID as well, but you've bounced back in a big way. You're working for Americans for Prosperity here in Missouri. And you're somebody from inner city Kansas City who nobody would ever expect to be a conservative. Tell me about what changed your life and what moved you in that direction.
Oh, man. First off, thanks for the opportunity. I say we all are born with conservative values. If we look back to the way we were raised with our grandmothers and grandfathers, no elbows on the table. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Take your shoes off when you walk in the house. Got to stand around and hold hands and pray before you eat on holidays. So those things are always rooted in me. But I think culture has a big hold on all young individuals, and a vessel can only express outwardly what it consumes inwardly. So once you hit me with 3, 4, 5, 10 years of rap music, I'm going to be a little degenerate, But luckily, I was able to get back to my roots and make my family proud.
So the culture, you think, drags you naturally to the left?
Yes, 100%.
And then for you, was there a moment or was it just a series of things in your life? Because you've got, how many kids now?
I have 10 together, 2 deceased children, 8 living children.
My gosh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about it. I didn't know that.
Oh, no, that's my superpower. Everybody always say, what would they do if they lost a child? I have 2 buried a row apart from each other, right at 12 Gate Cemetery. So I love life. I value every single day.
So you've got 8 children. And was there moments or moment in particular that made you kind of change your worldview as you saw it?
I should have woke up a long time ago.
How old are you?
I'm 35.
Okay, you're 30. So, yeah.
So when you live in a traumatic environment, you either run from it or you suppress it. And for so long, I just suppressed all the hurt, all the pain, all the trauma. My mother and father had really bad domestic violence. But what was unique is they both loved me. Neither one of them ever hit me, never yelled at me, never talked bad to me. Always told me I can do anything I want in this world. Spoke so much life to me, it makes no sense. But they were average people living with the environment and broken. And
right here in Kansas City.
Yes, sir. My mother overdosed on opioids in 2015. My daddy is still alive. He might be listening. What's up, Daddy? But at 16 years old, the neighborhood drug dealer was shot on my front porch. At 17, I graduated high school with no lights, no water, no gas in the home. But my parents always told me you didn't have to be a dope boy to have money. So I vividly remember going home the last day of high school and sitting on the couch crying to my mother because I didn't know what I was going to do. A lot of my friends were dying. And they say God makes no mistakes. So I started working at AT&T. And from AT&T, it transitioned to Sprint, from Sprint to Google. And in the back of my mind, I still was, like I said, culture obsessed a little bit. So I had some children. My first son passed at 18 years old from trisomy 18. But then I had a daughter. And my daughter really made me mature and grow up. And I remember it was her first day of kindergarten. And I went to the school that she was attending. It was a public school. And you had parents smoking and cussing. And that's when it hits you, the environment you in. I don't want my child around this every single day. So I applied for a job at Notre Dame de Sion as an IT guy. And I vividly remember looking at the post on LinkedIn, not LinkedIn, I'm sorry, Indeed, and scrolling past it saying, man, they're not gonna hire me, I'm black. And then something smacked me in the back of my head and told me to go back and apply for the job. And I went through 3 rounds of interviews. And after I got that position, they told me I was hired out of 50 candidates. So that's that confidence that you got to believe in you. And if you think you can't, then you can't. If you think you can, then you can. But if you don't put the effort in, you never know. So becoming a father is really what really springboarded my growth, my maturity, but also having deceased children. But when my mother was alive, she was my babysitter. So I still could drop my kids off to my mom every weekend and go, party and stuff and hang with my homeboys. But when she overdosed, there was nobody in front of the mirror. It was just me in the mirror. And I think something that all men know is that we don't put in 100% effort. We know we could get up earlier. We know we could eat a little better. We know we could be a little nicer. We know we could slow down and calm. And they say we all have 2 lives, and the second one begins when you realize you only have one. And burying those children should have matured me, but burying my mother, I knew I had to make her proud. And I couldn't carry myself as the way I know she didn't raise me to be.
So that was 10 years ago now. So you're 25 at the time.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was a major inflection point for you. Fast forward a couple of years, and I guess that's around when you called our show for the first time.
Yeah.
And you were listening to the station, and it was an accident, right? That you found this show on this radio station.
Yeah, so we always listen to 103.3, but somehow my wife had, by mistake, turned to 103.7.
Now, let's be clear, just for people, because now we're on 95.7 FM. We got this 100,000 watt FM stick. For people that don't know, for new listeners, we were on this little FM along with 710 AM, 103.7.
Yeah.
Which was just a little 250 watt nothing FM signal. But it was right around, KPRS, big R&B hip hop, what would we call it? Hip hop station here in Kansas City.
100%.
So we were right down at the time from those guys on 103.3, and we were on 103.7. So basically, what happened? You were on the wrong radio station?
Yeah. And I was leaving Hy-Vee Arena from playing basketball. We played early mornings. And I was listening. I'm like, oh, this is conservative. And I'm at the pump on 31st and Brooklyn at the gas station. I sit there and listen for about 5-10 minutes. And I realize it's local. And my first emotion was to call in. And my second thought was don't call in. And call in, you go back and forth inside your head.
Yeah.
When I go inside the store, I pay for my gas, and I decide to call in. And here we are years later.
So, yeah, I remember that. We were in the old building. And listen, the reality is there are not a lot of people that look like you or sound like you that call us. Now, there's more of them coming into the fold because the world is changing. We've grown this audience tremendously. But you were like a unicorn, right? I mean, you were a 30-year-old young black male in the inner city calling us. And was it a moment for you when you're like, I actually agree with the stuff this guy's saying right now?
Well, I kind of have.
Or you already were?
I kind of already was. So, I consumed the Larry Elder, the Thomas Sowell, the Jesse Lee Peterson. But outside of that, just growing up with a father, I watched that man get up every day and go to work. There was no excuses. No matter what, he would be drunk, he could get out of jail, and he would go make money. And I just always knew I had that same masculine energy inside of me. And when you watch the breakdown of the communities, when you're watching half your friends get murdered, when you're going to school writing RIP on lockers, when you're watching young women become, mothers at a young age, it's ignorance. But the only way you can have ignorance is lack of knowledge. Well, if somebody else controls the flow of knowledge, in a sense, they can keep you ignorant. And someone will always profit off your ignorance, whether you like it or not. So I had to become better so I could do better. And it's the example, like, I don't think I'm as much as an anomaly as the media or the algorithms can make it seem, right? Like, Tupac influenced Jay-Z, Jay-Z influenced Lil Wayne influenced Young Thug influenced King Von, YNW Melly, so on. So once you get to see somebody with a different perspective, it opens the door for it to happen. So I think I'm just the first one who done broke through, but it's about to be 100 of them behind me.
So you really think that this dam is going to break and there's going to be a flood of younger, especially black men moving to the right?
1,000,000%.
But you think with that has to come a change in the culture too, right? Because
and I think it will, because for the individuals who really grew up around violence, you don't want to raise your sons that way. For the individuals who you still got to go see your father in jail, you don't want to watch anybody else become that way. It's only propagated by the people who don't have to see it every single day. And I think there's enough individuals who have grew up in poverty, in violence like I have, but have made it out and able to become successful to use their voice and say, this ain't the right way.
How, listen, for those of us that didn't grow up in that kind of an environment, you obviously had a father who had some struggles, it sounds like, but also worked every day and loved you tremendously. But how hard is it to break the cycle if dad's not around? And what can change that? Because what we hear a lot is, hey, someone grew up without a dad, gets someone pregnant, they have no example to be there and be a role model for that kid and raise that child.
Yeah, I think it comes from telling young men the truth. You're responsible for your actions. We live in a victimhood society, but every time you lay down with a woman, there's a chance she could have a baby. So that's known. Now, I think the problem with a lot of young men, and I went through this in myself, is we live in a mama's boy society. where no one holds you accountable, and it's because you black, and it's because of police, and it's because of racism, and it's because of this, because of that, and eventually you got to get rid of the excuses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my grandfather always said the only color that really matters is green. And before you ever make
Is green like money?
Yeah. Because you put a white millionaire and a black millionaire in a room together, I bet the last thing they talk about is skin color.
Yeah.
But it's for the people in poverty, it's the biggest thing. And if we being honest, my brain don't know what color my skin is. Your brain is plastic.
Mm-hmm.
So I can manipulate you and mold you to think whatever I want to.
Yeah.
So if you understand anything the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve, then what story do I want to tell you? Do I want to tell you that you've been a slave and you've been oppressed if you've never accomplished anything? Or do I want to tell you about Jack Johnson, who was a heavyweight champion in 1907? Do I want to tell you about Madam C.J. Walker, who was a black millionaire?
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to tell you about the Civil Rights Bill in 1876 by U.S. Grant? See, I can tell you a story that makes you feel like you've less than, you never can become anything. Or I can tell you a story that makes you so proud of everything that your ancestors have been through that you want to do nothing but make them smile. It's all about perspective.
It is.
Perspective is reality.
Johnny Calloway's in studio for our Feature Friday segment. He's the Grassroots Engagement Director now for Americans for Prosperity here in Missouri. He's a lifelong Kansas Citian, and we'll keep the conversation going. I want to dive into more of the cultural topics coming up with him next on KCMO Talk Radio.
From the nation's heartland, it's Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
Our feature Friday guest is Johnny Calloway. Just find him on YouTube. Just Google YouTube Johnny Calloway, and that's Johnnnie Calloway, and you will find his YouTube page. He's got tens of thousands of subscribers on there, and he's a Kansas Cityan. He's been a longtime listener of this show. We connected as just a caller years ago, and now he's also working with Americans for Prosperity in Missouri as a grassroots engagement director. So let's talk about that, Johnny. Just the last election, we saw really a lot of urban areas move to the right. Now, there's still a long ways to go, but what do you attribute that to?
Foundation principles. Like, hip-hop culture has always been counterculture, if you think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, NWA had F the Police.
Yep.
So when you look at how Hollywood and every major artist is 100% aligned with the mainstream, well, that right there would tell you something doesn't correlate. You know, Kodak Black, about 6 months ago, dropped a song with Donald Trump ad-libs that no one heard of. There should be a number one song going crazy in the hood right now, but when you can suppress algorithms, then you can control what people know. But Trump has always been extremely popular. I think by year 3, he'll be mainstream popular. It's going to be hard to keep it hidden from the masses.
Now, do you think that'll be more amongst black men than it is black women? Because we've seen a shift amongst black men to the right, but women haven't really moved.
I think they'll move if they can find a man they want.
Oh, so you're saying basically if they're married, it will make a difference?
If they marry or they see a man that could potentially be a good husband, then they're going to pitch their views to match his.
So take me through that. I mean, in let's use urban Kansas City, for example. Are the married couples, even if they don't vote Republican, are they more conservative in nature? And is that a potential way for the party in particular to gain more of a foothold in these communities?
I think marriage in itself is a conservative institution.
Yeah.
Christ over man, man over woman, woman over children. See, everything that God does is perfect. And it has an order and it has a process. And if you go with that order, then you reap the benefits of it. And if you go against that order, which we've been seeing going on in the inner city since the 60s, look what you get. As you sow, so you reap.
So why is it then that there's just this institution of still voting for a party that is not really representative of those values?
The boogeyman. You know, you're scared. You better not be a Republican. You better not talk to them conservatives. You know, they tell you don't talk to conservatives, but who in the inner city is conservative? Everything has been run by Cleaver and Lucas. I was born in 89. Kansas City's been run by Democrats since 91. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result.
Mm-hmm.
And a different blackface doesn't give you a different result. It's still a blackface, give you Democratic policies.
Mm-hmm. So what about you? I mean, you told me a story once about how, your daughter plays basketball, right? Or, you've got 8 kids, so I'm sure.
They all hoop and play soccer a little bit.
But one story stood out where you walked in and she plays with mostly white kids and you had a MAGA hat on.
Mm-hmm.
And the white parents all did double takes and totally disagree with your politics.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, so what's that like?
When you live in your phone, which most people do, so you live in a false reality, an algorithm, it shocks you when you see someone with a different perspective, a different reality. And the way our brain works is you have to hear something or see something 6 times before you try to accept it as possible. So you could imagine the overload of a young black man walking around in a Make America Great again. But I think people need to be comfortable with different perspective, with different ideas. For too long, we've been not allowed to have open dialogue. And I want to know who my enemy is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to pretend you like me so you can stab me in the back when the minute I turn around. And that's the system that we've been operating in. And men have been emasculated where they can't say what they really feel. And I'm really big on the First Amendment. And I think if more men spoke their truth, then the world becomes a better place. But male suicide is through the roof. And it's because too many men are letting themselves be suppressed. And the more we open up, the more we speak, the more we save society.
How about when you walk around with a MAGA hat in like the grocery store in the urban core? How does that go?
Oh, nobody cares.
No one cares?
I get a bunch of thumbs up. I get a nice hat. I wore it on a plane, and I sat in the very front row on Delta, and the flight attendant was like, nice hat, asked to take a picture with me. I think this concept of what you can't do, it's fear, false evidence appearing real. And I look at myself as like a Shawn Michaels. You know, I'm the rebel, the heartbreak kid.
So you've never gotten a hard time walking into a urban Kansas City grocery store with a MAGA hat on. No one's ever given you a hard time.
Not once.
See, but that's not what social media would tell you.
I know. And the thing is, I put my videos on social media, but they don't go as far. But I make videos walking through the airport with a MAGA hat on and all that. But if you got to see it, then it becomes trendy. And that's how world work. I mean, if we're being honest, the reason most people join a Black Lives Matter or any of these groups is because it takes a lot of confidence to stand on your own and say all of y'all are wrong. But Romans 8:31, if God is for us, who could be against us? So when you filled with the Spirit, then you willing to stand 10 toes down and say, I ain't with all that. And I think if we can get more people to be confident in themselves, then society naturally shifts you to be conservative. But society takes advantage of broken people. It wants you sad with anxiety, depression, not believing yourself, not loving yourself, and feel like the world is over. And the future is bright. We got the greatest technology we've ever had. You know, if there's ever a reason to be excited about the future, is now.
Yeah, I got about a minute here, Johnny, but you were supposed to go to the White House this week. The weather prevented that from happening, but you're going to the White House next week with a bunch of fellow Black conservative influencers. And what are you going to say to President Trump if you meet him?
I hope I can get a picture with him. I haven't even thought what I would say to him if I get to meet him. That's something I need to ponder over for the next few days.
You got a few days to figure it out, man. Hey, you know what you should tell him? Tell him he's got to join this radio show in Kansas City, Mundo in the morning, and we'd love to have him. Can you tell him that for me?
For Pete, I got you, dog.
Hey, man, will you have photos up on your Instagram page?
Hey, I'm taking as many pictures as possible, many as possible, just because of the opportunity to get to go to the White House to meet the president. I mean, I grew up in the City of Mission homeless shelter, and I'm going to the White House. If that ain't the American dream, I don't know what is.
And you're the first one in your family who's ever going to step foot in that White House.
Yes, and not one member of my family is upset about my politics. My mama, rest in peace, mama, not you. My daddy, my aunties, my brother, everyone is okay with me supporting Trump. And if you let politics divide your family, you got bigger issues.
I totally agree. Hey, Johnny, it is great to have you here. Johnny Calloway, now the Grassroots Engagement Director, Americans for Prosperity, Missouri. Find his YouTube channel. Just search for YouTube, Johnny Calloway, and that's JOHNNIE, and it'll be the first one that pops up right now. I guess Trump's helping you out on the platforming part there.
Yeah, the algorithm been killing me over the last 3-4 years, man.
And he's also on Instagram. Follow him there. Search Johnny Calloway or misunderstood_genius with the E as a 3. Great to have you in, my man. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity, man.
You bet. More coming up after the news on KCMO.
On Friday's Guy Benson Show, Shannon Bream, host of Fox News Sunday, will be here, as will Trey Gowdy, our colleague, talking politics and the news of the day, coming up at 2 o'clock on KCMO.
Johnny Callaway, always a great guest, and good to reconnect with him here on 95.7 FM. KCMO Talk Radio, as always, the interviews will be up on the podcast after the show, so be sure to check it out there. We had Bill O'Reilly on last hour, always a great interview as well. So just find us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, search Pete Mundo, KCMO, and you will be able to subscribe there. So yesterday, some big news came out for Kansas City landlords that I want to make sure doesn't get buried. I only saw one local station or news outlet cover this, and it's a big deal. Fox 4 had it, I mean, to their credit, but that's it. And that was a federal district court pausing Kansas City's ban on landlords being required to accept Section 8 vouchers. And listen, when this happened, I want to say it was about 12 months ago or so, we talked about how this was not going to help the rental market in Kansas City. The way you reduce rents is you increase the supply. It's just, I mean, it's economics 101, right? If you're a renter or you're a landlord in Kansas City, this is just, I mean, you go to a day of economics in any college in America, and this is taught. If there is more of something, the price of that something goes down. Assuming that you haven't changed the demand, if you increase the supply, the price comes down. That's just a fact. It's true whether you're talking about Chiefs tickets or eggs or anything else. I mean, that's what's happening with eggs right now. We had to kill 100 million chickens because of the bird flu. So what does that mean? Fewer chickens means fewer eggs. Theoretically, people still want eggs at the same pace that they did a year ago. So it's the same number of people chasing fewer goods, in this case, eggs. Therefore, the demand goes up and the price goes up. We got to replenish those chickens that we had to kill because of the bird flu to get the egg prices back under control. And it's amazing how now, like, MSNBC is focused on grocery prices. And this really isn't Trump's fault. It's not even Biden's fault. It's just, unfortunately, something that has happened that has driven up the cost of eggs. Like, that's it, John.
Boomers know it as when we got tickets to Summer Jam concerts at Arrowhead, it said, or Acts of God. You know?
Yeah, I mean,
you
that's
weren't
what this
going to get a
is.
refund if it rained or Acts of God. So,
yeah. I mean, this is no one's fault politically that eggs are up, okay? It's just this thing happened. We had to kill the chickens. There's 1.5 billion chickens in the country. We had to kill 100 million. That's, an 8% decrease in the amount of chickens you've got right now. So this is what happens.
So Democratic hens aren't withholding from the roosters as suggested by some. Okay.
No. We don't have a bunch of tranny hens out there who now aren't laying eggs or whatever.
From a rooster to a hen, real fast, boy.
That's not what's going on. So this federal district court puts an end to this for now. And the mayor puts out a statement saying the actions taken by landlords to challenge the program in courts and in Jefferson City jeopardize housing access for over 17,000 Kansas Cityans waiting for housing vouchers. No, let's be clear. By you requiring a landlord to take Section 8, which is not discrimination, let's be very clear. This is not discrimination in the traditional sense. It's true that you cannot discriminate based on race or gender or sexual orientation as a landlord, right? You can't do that. But this is different because what you are now doing is requiring a landlord in Kansas City to take a Section 8 voucher, which is not always guaranteed. Look at what Trump is doing right now and this administration. They may be trying to pare back some of the Section 8 vouchers that exist out there. They may be saying, hey, there are too many people right now that are abusing this system. And suddenly, if you're a landlord on the receiving end of that, well, guess what? You may not get your rent check for the month. This is not discrimination in the traditional sense that proponents of this city ordinance are trying to sell you on. This morning, we had Stacey Johnson Cosby on the show. She is the president of the Kansas City Regional Housing Alliance, and she totally pushed back on this narrative that not wanting to accept Section 8 is some type of discrimination. So for those who will say, as the mayor and others will say in this case, well, listen, we have discrimination laws. You can't not rent to people because of their skin color, their sexual orientation. If they've got the money to pay, whether it's through a voucher or not, why would you not want them as a tenant? How would you compare those two things, and what would you respond to the mayor or other advocates with?
One thing that they said is that this is guaranteed income. It's just like someone with a paycheck. And we know that a governmental program is not like someone with a paycheck. And we saw that a few weeks ago when there was fear that some governmental programs were going to be cut. Section 8 was one of those talked about. So imagine if the federal government stopped funding a program, then we would be stuck with someone in our properties that could not pay their rent. So it is not guaranteed. And any housing provider or landlord that chooses to do business with the government takes that risk knowingly and willingly. In this particular case, the city thought they were going to force us to work with a high-risk renter against our will.
And that's exactly what this was. And there are many small mom-and-pop landlords who have bailed on Kansas City because they don't want to deal with the red tape, the bureaucracy, trying to find the potential legal loopholes, waiting on lawsuits, battles in court. They're out. They're done. You know who's going to be left? The corporate landlords. You know who KC Tenants hates? Corporate landlords. If you're KC Tenants, this socialist organization in Kansas City that really desires free housing from the government, I mean, that's their end goal here. They somehow have this city council wrapped around their finger. I don't know why. That's a story for another day, but they do. They're a far, far, far left, highly progressive group in Kansas City. And they've got this city council, I mean, just by the short hairs. It's crazy. So they rail against corporate landlords and anyone potentially profiting off of housing. Well, who's going to be left when it comes to landlords in Kansas City? Mom and pops are out. I mean, they do not want to deal with any of this. They're selling. They're getting out of the game. Stacey talked to us about that as well this morning. And it's like, well, who do you think's going to be hanging around? The folks who own 1 light and 2 light and 3 light and all the corporate landlords that you rail against. Less government means more opportunity for the little guy to compete with the big guy. The more regulation you get, the more likely it is only the big guys can survive. It's exactly what happened in 2008 after Dodd-Frank passed. The financial crisis happens, and of course the government's like, we got to have more regulations on these big bad banks. Well, guess who couldn't afford to deal with all the bureaucratic red tape that existed now and all the new things that these banks had to deal with courtesy of the government? The small banks. Guess who folded? The small banks. Who was left? The big banks. It consolidated power amongst the biggest banks in the world. And this is what always happens under these heavy-handed liberal policies. They claim they're helping the little guy, but in the end, what it does is it creates this really monopoly at the very top amongst those who can afford to deal with all the new government regulations. That's what ends up happening, and it will happen with housing in Kansas City. We'll wrap up the show with our buddy Kevin Keatsman. He's taking over at 10 o'clock with Uncanceled on 95.7 FM KCMO.
Stream Mundo in the morning on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
Wrapping up a Friday with Kevin Keatsman. Coming up with Uncanceled on KCMO. What's happening, my man? How are you?
I got about 3 or 4 pages of stuff here, Pete, and I think you've covered them all today, so I don't think I have much coming up.
Oh, come on with that. My gosh. You know how many people are just like, hey, I'm ready for Kevin at 10 o'clock.
No.
4 hours of this guy's enough.
I'm hearing more and more of your show, and then I'm like, scratch that, scratch that,
No,
scratch that. I can't do
no,
that. Pete's done that.
no.
No, seriously, that was mind-bending what you were talking about with those GoFundMe pages today.
How crazy is that?
It just stopped me in my tracks, the numbers.
I didn't think it was going to be that big of a discrepancy that Ralph Yarl's GoFundMe had $3.5 million and Sean Brady, the restaurant owner killed at Brady and Fox, had $2,300.
I mean, I don't even know what that says about our country.
I know.
And what has been force-fed down our throats for so long.
And
it's tragic.
And that's why, the Yarl family's coming out and still saying that Andrew Lester's a racist because they got $3.5 million reasons to say that, whether we know it or not.
There's plenty of people, and we know what the percentages are. We know 30, 40% of the country will buy into that every single time it is stated. They just go in hook, line, and sinker.
Mm-hmm. It's sad.
It is.
And then Sean Brady, literally just gets gunned down trying to protect his own vehicle and $2,300.
Right, he was taking the trash out, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And they were stealing cars?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
It's just crazy, man. Absolutely crazy.
It is.
Did you see what happened or what is happening today in Philadelphia? They're having their big parade.
Oh, good for them.
I know.
Good for them.
Good for them.
I like
right?
all these people like Saquon Barkley's such a good dude. He got full truckloads of Bud Light for his offensive line. I'm like, really? It's free.
Yeah.
Okay, Saquon spent nothing on the beer or the beer trucks. Don't make a hero out of a guy because he shotgunned a beer after the Super Bowl and a beer company jumped on it and delivered. They're each riding in a beer truck. I don't know if you saw this. The
I
offensive
didn't
linemen.
see that.
Oh, yeah, the offensive linemen each get a giant truck of Bud Light to give away, toss, share, drink with their teammates, whatever it is they're going to do. And everybody's making Saquon a hero because he got these for his linemen. He didn't get them. Some marketing person called up and says, can we use your name if we do this for the linemen? Sure.
And Bud Light needs the help desperately. Still.
Yeah.
2 years, whatever it is, 2 years later now. But that was an impressive shotgun. I mean, that thing went down in a second and a half.
I guess. What kind of beer was it? I couldn't tell.
I couldn't tell either.
It almost looked like it was pink, didn't it?
Yeah, I remember trying to figure that out, and I was like, I don't know what it was, but that was an impressive shotgun.
I've never had a beer out of a can that looked pink.
Yes.
I can say that.
You can tell he went to Penn State based on that shotgun. They drink like crazy.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, my gosh. I mean,
Okay.
that's all they do there is drink.
I thought that was Wisconsin.
Well, I mean,
Leading the
you
Big
get to
Ten.
that upper Midwest area, it's all the same.
It's a long winter.
It's a
isn't it?
long winter. I mean, gosh, we're having one here as well. It's
for
just
sure.
crazy. My goodness. First weekend without football. Is this like a depressing time for you, or do you get into college basketball mode?
This has been easier for me this year because the Chiefs just got pounded on Sunday. I'm not sure I want to watch football for a while. You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
After watching that, it's like you don't want to, after you drive home and you've seen a bad wreck and you know it's unfortunate and you think about it for a couple of days, you don't really want to get back on the freeway for a while.
Yeah.
So for me, I think I'm good with football for just a little bit. I'm okay until, what is it? Is it the USFL? What's the name of the league in the spring?
Yeah, they were promoting it at the Super Bowl.
UFL.
UFL.
Okay.
I'll watch.
Will
Do they
you
still
watch
just
that?
play in one city? Do they still just play in Birmingham?
I don't know what they're doing,
No,
but
they play all around. They play in St. Louis.
do
Let's
they?
go. Let's road trip.
Is that the Battlehawks or whatever over there?
Yeah.
Is that team that they have?
Right.
Play at the old Rams Stadium?
I'm so happy for St. Louis that they have a football team.
I get really into, my team stinks, Villanova, but I start getting more into college basketball now that the season's over. And I don't know if you're feeling differently about Jerome Tang, but listen, 6 straight games.
How do you feel differently about somebody who squandered the first 2.5 months of their season with top 6 NIL dollar talent, did nothing with it, and now they're playing to their potential?
Now, let me just ask you, as a devil's advocate, is it harder to mold these teams now if you're getting a whole new team in November?
For everyone, but a lot of coaches are doing it, and he doesn't. So maybe that isn't the way for him. Maybe he should be recruiting younger players and keeping them in the program longer. Look, they said goodbye to 2 players that are at Texas and I think not Creighton. They had 2 really good players, Carter and the name's escaping me. Really good players last year, and they just let them go.
Yeah.
And then they brought new ones in. Because why? Because they didn't get along or whatever it was that happened. No, if they kept those players, they would have been just fine this year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you add 12 new players every year. I think Bill Self's going through some of that.
I was going to say, KU's dealing with, they're 2 years in now to just, by KU standards, complete mediocrity.
Right, but Dennis Gates didn't have trouble at Mizzou. He was 0-17 in the league last year and just has turned it around. And they're just playing great. I mean, they just crushed Oklahoma Wednesday night. He's got a whole bunch of new talent this year, and they're really good, and they were really good from the start. We didn't think they were because they were so bad last year, remember?
Yes.
Start of the year, we
Yeah.
didn't think Missouri was any good. They've proven to me they're a really good basketball team. They're one of the 25 best.
And they beat Kansas earlier in the year as well. So, I just wonder if how we evaluate coaches is going to change now. Bill Self's not made for coaching new guys every year, it seems like.
You know, I do hear a couple of criticisms from Kansas fans that I can deal with when it comes to Bill Self. They're saying this era is not for him. They point to this. What Bill Self was really good at was getting younger players, keeping them on the bench, using their playing time against them as the punishment. You can't punish these kids now. They got millions of dollars. You can't make them run the stairs. It's professional basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So the things that he was really good at, he can't use those anymore. You can't put a talented player on the bench. They will leave. They will leave in the middle of the season. So he would get young, talented players, and he'd really bust them. And by their second year, you'd see massive improvement. He really can't do that anymore. One of the really big chips that he could play year in and year out as a coach, he can't really do anymore.
It's one of the reasons that my guy, Jay Wright, left Villanova. It wasn't as much of that, but he would bring in 3-star guys and making them NBA players. Guys don't want to do that. They want to play now, right? I mean, they want to show up and play.
And what you want is coaches that can X and O. If you have an NIL department that's going to buy you players, there is no recruiting.
Yeah.
Like everybody's, look at the players Tang recruited. I'm like, you didn't recruit any of them.
Showed them a check.
They spent the 6th most money in NIL in the offseason. So I've got all these K-State buddies of mine, and I give them a hard time. You know who'd be great in Manhattan right now? Bruce Weber. They're just buying players. Bruce wouldn't do it. He wouldn't play the game. So he couldn't recruit. And he wouldn't cheat. No matter what, that guy wouldn't cheat and break a rule. Now you can just buy that roster. Imagine what he'd be doing with that roster.
Well, that's
because he's X and O's. That guy can coach.
Well, I totally agree. I'm glad you went there because that's where I think if you're looking for a coach, go to FCS, go to Group of 5. If a guy can coach basketball, X's and O's, you can do it on any level because there's no recruiting skill anymore if you got the money to do it.
Yeah, a lot of people are talking about the Drake coach and how good he is, and they're just phenomenal this year. I mean, they're so easy to watch. They just move and pass and play defense. They do so many things so well, and a lot of people are looking at schools like that going, okay, great. You bring that guy into the SEC, you give him a $20 million budget or $15 million budget to go out and buy players, look out.
And he used to be at Northwest Missouri State, won D2 title. He was at Emporia State for a little bit. My father-in-law wants him to be the next head coach of Villanova. He's all in on that guy.
And the KU fans are all like, fire Bill Self, hire the Drake coach.
Okay,
I'm like, come on.
Come on.
You haven't seen it?
Nah, not to that degree.
What part of the phone are you on?
Well, I'm not following the KU fans.
Oh, my God.
Are they
X
going
is
nuts?
full of it. X is full of
Really?
Oh, it's crazy. They're nuts. They're insane. They're worse than Chiefs fans after Sunday.
They want Bill Self out,
It's just the fringe element.
The
It's
fringe.
the crazoids. But for any Kansas fan to even think that for a second, my phone was blowing up during that game last Saturday.
Wow.
I got a lot of KU friends.
Yeah.
And they were like, this team sucks. Season's over. Spring football, making all kinds of jokes about themselves. I'm like, you got 8 more games left before the tournament.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay. The guy can coach.
Yeah. You just got to find that 7-8 man rotation you like, settle in, and maybe bring KJ Adams off the bench or something. Maybe go back to that.
Yeah, your daughters make those little art projects where you put the glue on the paper and then the glitter and stuff. KU has a lot of glue and no glitter.
Yeah.
That's their team this year. They're missing that one guy that when there's 2 minutes left can take over a game. You set a play up for. Who do you set a play up for at this point? If you're Kansas, it's coming down to one possession. What is the play?
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. I don't think it's Hunter Dickinson.
No.
I mean, he's 20-10 every night. He's a heck of a college player, but I don't think you put the game in his hands.
No.
I don't know whose hands you put it in. Mayo, maybe, but that's probably a jump shot.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm into it this time of year.
Yeah,
Kevin,
it's going to be fun.
Have a great weekend. Great show, my man.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
Kevin Keatsman Uncanceled is coming up next. Have a great weekend. We're back Monday morning on KCMO.